This lazy guy looks weak at first until you realize what he's really capable of. But turns out he's not just talented, he's shockingly powerful too. He can wipe out a cursed dragon without even breaking a sweat. He can shut down a monster-level strike with nothing but 2 fingers. Even when he stood eye to eye with the Demon King, boredom still crushed the excitement out of him. Just look at his face after he smashes right through the... They surged into the mountains right after the Demon King unleashed a brutal, game-changing attack. He even wants to sleep through this. But before I ruin the fun, let me hit you with the story from the start. Hermes was peacefully dozing when his sister suddenly burst in. The girl fires a question at him. Did he do something? Because Mimi, who acts like a butler, has been hunting for him. Hermes told her some annoying task got dumped on him, and that's exactly why he bolted away. His sister blurted out that he's the head of the Kano family, so now he has to take every responsibility dead seriously. As the 4th son of the Kano family, there was just no way he ever should have ended up as the head. Then boom, a meteor smashed down on the party where all 3 of his older brothers were gathered, and in a tragic instant, they all died. Anyway, he just wanted to sink into a super lazy life, so he told his sister to take at least 1 day off. His sister smirks like, nothing special today, because it's not even his birthday or some big anniversary. His sister was stuck on one question, what's so special about this? He cut her off mid-sentence and blurted, today's the spring solstice. His sister looks totally lost, like she's got no clue what's happening. So he breaks it down like this. Just like the solstice, it's that one day when the air turns weirdly spring-like, with the perfect mix of temperature and humidity, but his sister refuses to buy it because that's not a real thing. Rage boiled in him the moment she realized he was always cracking jokes when he claimed he made that spring solstice. But he swears this is the most spring-like day of the whole year. He crossed his arms and demanded she let him have a quiet, peaceful afternoon. The girl snapped, couldn't take it anymore, and he snapped at Hermes to take his responsibilities seriously. Hermes nodded in agreement, but he told him he'd do it tomorrow. The girl let out a heavy sigh, then made up her mind she'd tell Mimi where he'd gone. The girl ditches him, and before Mimi can even spot him, Hermes snaps his fingers. Later, Mimi finally shows up, but she's totally baffled because Lady Solace swears Hermes is here, and yet somehow nobody can find it. He slapped his hand on the back of the chair, then totally missed that Hermes was already there, lurking in plain sight, invisible. Spotted Hermes' drink still sitting there, untouched, like they'd been abandoned in mid-sip. But when he still showed up nowhere, he snapped, turned around, and left the place. Once Mimi was gone, Hermes snapped his fingers and reappeared in a flash. Now he could finally bask in his solstice masterpiece, and vows right through his teeth that he'll never, ever reveal his real power. Next morning, Hermes sprinted toward Mimi, barreling forward like his life depended on it. He slammed on the brakes and stopped dead. But the old man snapped him shut, bringing up what happened yesterday yet. Hermes blurted, all fired up, to toss it aside and go ask for gold coins. He's going to use that money to grab a limited edition Ortea photo book. A sage claimed the most beautiful woman in all of history, born once every 10,000 years, was holding court, and then he dropped the bombshell. It's the first run edition with serial number 0 plus her autograph. The old man demanded to know if Hermes was once again asking for money for some hobby, and Hermes snapped back because for him, Ortea isn't a pastime, it's his whole life, and hands him exactly what he needs, then advises Hermes not to drop yesterday's mess, but Hermes brushes it off and bolts out in a hurry. Hermes finally snapped up that photo book he'd been eyeing. He spots it, those fingerprints were almost on him, so he starts chanting his magic, then he fires up his magic gloves with full force. Then he cracks the book open, peering inside like he can't wait for what's coming, but right when everything's building up, Sola shows up out of nowhere. He snaps, "Stop!" because he's right in the middle of the best part. But Sola finally clocked what had been chewing him up, and he still hadn't dealt with yesterday's mess. Frustration surged through her the moment she saw her older brother, and she snatched the photo book right away. Snatched a book and tossed it aside, then slammed more papers into his hands. She warned him she wouldn't hand it back until he fixed the problem, and Hermes fumed because it basically looked like homework. He realized that if he didn't finish that homework, his photo book was about to get tossed straight into the trash. So he swallowed his pride and asked Sola straight up if all he needed was to fix the problem. And Sola nodded, telling him the very first step was to pinpoint the enemy, then team up with Mimi to plan everything and ready their troops. Sola wasn't done yet when Hermes suddenly burst out in a full-on sprint. He'd do absolutely anything just to get that photo book back in his hands. A few days later, Mimi spilled the news everyone had confirmed the cursed dragon was gone. They even confirmed the cursed-tainted land has been purified, but somehow our lazy guy is sitting there looking downright miserable. Mimi pushed the point. Everyone watched it get wiped out just 2 days ago, and somehow the damage stayed barely controlled even after its appearance. So yeah, a bunch of nearby towns stepped up to throw him a 10,000-person fan base as a thank you, and every single one of them was screaming the citizens' heartfelt gratitude while Hermes sat there sweating bullets, hearing it all. He demanded to know what they'd let him do, and if this monster was really that strong, why didn't they warn him? Then he took it down by himself, and I swear panic hit him fast, because now his lazy life is about to get wrecked, that they finally see how strong he is. Mimi jumped in to clarify the original plan they were going to give him an escort, yet they never expected Hermes to charge in alone. The report said it all right there, and he even added that the king was thrilled, then leaned in and told him, "I want to personally commend you." Hermes begged the old man to shut it down, but it couldn't be undone because in his head, his fame was roaring back to life like it never left. Even with his real powers still locked away, he's already the strongest because he's chasing one goal: stop that power, crush his own will, and someday turn his house into a kingdom. It was him, the tale of a noble who refuses to climb the ranks and keeps dodging a higher status. Sola spots the maid and blurts out if she's seen his brother. When the maid answers, she swears Hermes in his study suddenly perked up like he'd heard Sola's voice. He knew his sister for 10 whole years, so he figured she'd come crashing back into his life, and if Sola tried to find him, she'd be too late. He had to bolt first. The moment Sola swings the door open and yells, "Brother, father!" Hermes snaps his magic into place and rockets out the window. Calling him brother father because his sister insists on it drives Hermes up the wall she's plotting to crown him as the family head. And legally, she's his daughter, but at least he can feel the trick coming. He stormed into the city when an old man suddenly called out to him. They called him up and urged him to test their brand new product. He politely waved off the old man's request because he was already juggling more than enough, but the old man wouldn't back down, insisting he should take it since his right hand was free. As he wandered the streets, he couldn't miss the city buzzing with life. He was stunned when a lady suddenly wrapped her arms around him from behind and... Yeah, she was Arutia, but she wasn't the one in that photo book. For a full 100 years, the name Arutia has ruled the world of courtesans, so much so that different girls keep getting named after the legendary great sage and his unmatched beauty, because in the beauty trade, that name is basically the go-to. And that girl is no different. She's right there in the same storm. She's just one more Arutia courtesan in a sea of them. But somehow she's one of his closest. Arutia leaned in and asked him, "Got any free time?" She's nowhere near as bad as his sister, but every so often she still yanks him into trouble and he tries to refuse. Arutia wouldn't budge since the shops were completely empty. She insisted he'd be her guest. Out of everything Arutia could have asked for, this was the easiest slam dunk, no hassle, no headache. Arutia's still hot on his trail and she's not letting him get away. And she even flashed part of her chest at him. Hermes didn't even seem interested, but he spun around anyway and headed straight for the shop. Arutia was fuming because no matter how hard she flirted, he always brushed her off. In the shop, Hermes sprawled peacefully across Arutia's lap, and she stroked his hair with slow, soothing touches. Then, Arutia slides him the menu like it's a chance to do something kind, but he shrugs it off because, yeah, being lazy is his favorite kind of fun. Arutia didn't slow down for a second, then blurted that she had a once-in-a-lifetime favor to ask. She wants Hermes to crank up their shop sales, but he's stunned because he's been helping boost their numbers already. But Arutia isn't on that topic when Hermes hears she brought up the good sake. Her eyes suddenly light up like a spark. His jaw hit the floor when Arutia said it came from Dunamis, but his excitement instantly fizzled when she revealed the sake was 37 years old. It's from the worst year ever, the one where a typhoon and an earthquake slammed back-to-back, soaking most of the barrels. His eyes lit up again the moment Arutia said it came from one of the barrels that never got soaked, so rare that it's going to cost him a pretty penny. That's why he demanded she bring it out at once. Then Arutia leaned in and kissed him. He bolted outside to grab the sake, but Hermes couldn't stop drooling because in his head, the world probably has almost none left, just one legendary vintage sitting pristine despite its heartbreaking past. He planted himself at the window, scanning the world like he was hunting for something that just had to be out there. He yanked himself out the window without a second to hesitate, sniffs hard and follows the scent straight to the path ahead. But then, boom, a gigantic monster slams into his path, blocking the way completely. He launched a brutal kick into the monster and barked for it to back off. Then his eyes caught exactly what he'd been searching for. He snatches a handful of fruits and flat out ignores the monster clinging to his back. His brow nodded as the monster stomped the tree, shattering it with one brutal step. He didn't think twice. He lunged in and smashed the monster the instant it appeared. Monster? Somehow, he never even broke a sweat while dealing with it. No fear, no struggle, not a single drop. He let out a breath of relief knowing the other fruits were safe, and the one he grabbed from the forest was savma plums. Pair it with the dunamis and you've got the perfect fit. This is the best way to enjoy it. Until a crowd shows up and starts swarming in to join them. Morning hit, and when he finally woke up, he stared at the ceiling like, how the hell did I even make it home last night? Because he'd gotten way too drunk. The moment Sola shows up, he immediately figures, ugh, it's trouble again, isn't it? So he blurts out an apology because he doesn't have a second to waste on any trouble. He shot his sister a quick, shocked look. When she finally looked happy, she smiled like, don't worry, he already handled it. She talked about the Odamla that showed up in Lazarus Forest. Turns out the locals were in full-on panic and marched straight to them to beg for help. Hermes can't forget the moment he trekked into that same forest yesterday to grab some plums. So the monster he knocked out back then. Same one she was talking about right after that, he flat out denied it. But Sola didn't buy it at all. She'd already gone out, cornered people nearby, and checked for herself. Some people swore they'd seen him around before and even stepped up to testify about it. Sola couldn't stop smiling just like her brother-father was always going to. He went straight for the monster and took it down all by himself. Hermes couldn't dodge it anymore, so he blurted an excuse to run to the bathroom. Then, drunk on the thrill of that insanely rare sake, he totally lost track and accidentally wiped out a monster without even knowing it. Hermes sat there, totally unbothered, calmly flipping through his book like nothing in the world could touch him. Book when Sola barreled it. Just as he was about to shove the book out of sight, Sola snatched it up instantly, then her brows knit tight when she saw it was an arranged partner photo book. And for a second, she wondered if her brother was really hunting for a date. But that photo book wasn't for show, it was for her. Stuffed with matchmaking pics, and it had been ages since they'd pulled out one of those. The Kano family finally got bumped up to count status, and that's probably why all those political marriages are flooding back in. Sola caught on fast and asked, "So, is there anyone out there who actually has a solid chance?" But his brother says there's nobody because when it comes to them, no one truly stands out. It's all these marriages that chain them into political alliances, and that's why it somehow gets treated like normal. She couldn't stop wondering what her brother's father was about to do next. At first, she was nothing more than Hermes' older sister. But since she was set to inherit the family instead of him, she filed a case to become his adopted daughter, and that's how Hermes rose to become the head of the house. Ever since then, whenever the house is in chaos, she runs to him for help and calls him brother-father without missing a beat. Hermes slammed the door on every single one of them, because he'd never in a million years hand her over to guys like that. Sola let out a laugh, convinced Hermes was actually taking it seriously. And then Hermes hit him with the truth. She's the only daughter of the Kano house, basically living like a princess. Sola looks totally pleased. She winks at him and begs him to keep her safe until the day she gets married, and Hermes nods and agrees. But the very next day, panic hit hard. Everyone lost their minds when they learned that Sola had been kidnapped. Hermes shoots up from the chair and demands to know who did it. Then his jaw drops when Mimi blurts that the kidnapper is the Demon King. Turns out Demon King Kari wasn't just some random villain. He was a long-lost distant cousin of the Kano family. 400 years ago, the previous Demon King and the first head of the Kano family were both standing side by side with the same man. The Boar children kept the Kano line going, but since Kaori, the Demon King's child, belongs to a long-lived race, she's still alive, still ruling, and reigning to this very day. So, for Hermes of the Kano house, she's basically his great-great-aunt, like, right down the bloodline. With a crystal ball in hand, Mimi warned him that a letter had finally come from that Demon King, so he smashed it on the spot. Then, bam, Kori pops up out of nowhere, introduces herself, and with the whole story already in her ears, she wastes no time. So, is Sola the princess of the Kano family? Hermes nodded, because Sola was the only daughter. Then Kaori leaned in and told him, "My dad always said the Demon King doesn't just show up, he kidnaps princesses." That's why she grabbed Sola and ordered Hermes to show up at the Demon King's castle, because if he truly wants to save his sister, that's the only way. And Demon Kings use this old trick to reach humans, and they do it one way only, so there's no arguing back or asking questions. Then she threw a final wave over her shoulder and vanished into thin air. Later, Hermes raced for the castle, and Sola kept screaming his name, begging him to come back and save her. But somehow he just refused to buy her story. Without warning, he asks her, rock or paper? Sola snaps right back with scissors and even flashes her hand. In the end, Hermes finally clocked it. She wasn't kidnapped at all, and she sure wasn't tied up. Then Kori shows up out of nowhere, corners him, and demands he come because if he doesn't, his sister is about to pay the price with something truly awful. He quizzed me on what would happen step by step just so he could know for sure. Because his father swore that when a Demon King kidnaps a princess, the tradition is brutal humiliation. But Sola got the exact opposite, and that fact just made him simmer with irritation over the nonsense his ancestors preached. So the moment Kari heard him going on, she snapped at him to shut up. If he's going to save Sola, he'll have to beat fate in a blaze of glory. Hermes nodded, then scanned the room like a hawk, making sure nobody would ever catch what they were about to do. Kaori barrels forward and smashes into him with a lightning-fast attack. That's when it hit him. This wasn't a warm-up anymore, they were going full force. Kaori came flying at him and smashed a kick straight into her. With that kind of power, Hermes got launched and slammed straight through a massive mountain like it was nothing. But somehow attack didn't even leave a dent. He just stared like nothing happened, then shot back, "Wait, did you really call me a prince a second ago? Because if she's going to hit him with that title, she better stick to it." He snapped his fingers and unleashed a massive burst of power to slam back with a full counterattack. Kaori snapped his defense into place and sent that attack flying away. Kaori kept going too late to realize he was already behind her. Then he swung a brutal kick that sent her crashing hard into the ground. Hermes was baffled. Kaori looked like they were loving the fight even though they were utterly wiped out, and they kept trading blows until a full 30 minutes zipped by. Kaori wheezed for breath and admitted Hermes had conquered her, but no matter how Hermes searched, she was totally unscathed. He even blinked in disbelief when Kaori said, "As long as there's light, I'll rise again. She'll get reborn again and again, but when it's all said and done, he'll be old, then gone for good." But for Hermes, it was all a performance pure show, so she overcommitted herself, and then the castle started crumbling, piece by piece. That's why Solo comes calling. He bolts toward her on the spot, trying to catch. Solo was grinning because he still managed to protect him. Even if it's a pointless showdown meant purely to put on a show. Because in her world, girls light up when someone treats them like royalty. They both locked eyes on the wrecked castle, staring like it just stole their breath. Solo grinned in pure relief. Hermes' aftercare was perfect, start to finish. She remembers how her father always said, "Leave it better than you found it." And when Hermes hears that, his mood drops because he can't stand their ancestors, and he swears they were unbearable. So, yeah, he's grinning, because it looks like whatever he pulled off in that place will fly under everyone's radar. But he was blindsided later when Carrie went public and declared that he'd beaten her boom, his fame skyrocketed, and it absolutely crushed him. He watched Medea whirl her blade as the moment unfolded. When he screamed her name, the girl lit up the moment she saw her master watching her. Medea is one of Sword Saint Perseus's granddaughters, and she trained under Hermes as his disciple. The girl leans in and asks for her swordsmanship to be tested. Hermes told her she'd leveled up hard way more than when they first met, and her performances are leagues better now. Medea's eyes brimmed with tears because she'd done it. After all that grind and 9 solid hours of sleep, everything finally clicks and Hermes spots a sword propped against a tree. He snatched it up, then barked at Medea to unleash her technique on him. Medea froze for a second, doubts crashing in like a wave, but Hermes shoved her into fighting him for real because he didn't just want a sparring match, he wanted to watch her level up, and shot straight for Hermes, throwing himself forward to land the hit. He grinned because Medea kept pushing that swing farther than he ever expected. Then he snaps out just 2 fingers and snatches her sword out of the air. It slammed down with a brutal force, and everything behind him got obliterated. Medea's eyes glittered with fire, like she already knew her master would shut down her attack in seconds. So she went right into battle mode, watching every move and deciding should she slice lighter with her sword, or just drill the forms again. Hermes flashes a proud smile because he genuinely respects Medea's grit and drive. She's the kind of student worth teaching, so he decided it's time to get dead serious. That's why he trapped her under his magic. Medea couldn't move a single inch because he was holding her tight. He shoots his right hand up and Medea mirrors it instantly. Every single move he made got copied by her. It's a simple spell, cast it, and the target's body starts mimicking his moves like they're being puppeted by fate. But it looks like Hermes is getting annoyed because instead of asking why they're doing all this, Medea just showers him with praise. So he snapped at her and told her he was about to teach her brand new techniques. But just like always, Medea had to clamp her lips tight whenever anyone asked who was in charge. She then admitted clearly and without hesitation that her master was Nanasu, and that she was a disciple of the Nanasu school. Then he started teaching Medea, and she latched onto every word like it was life or death. After a while, Hermes finally lit up with joy because her moves were already flawless. Now it was all about drilling harder and staying sharp. Medea saluted her master with a full heart, grateful beyond words. Just when they thought they were safe, 3 maids burst in out of nowhere, gripping placards like they were about to change everything. Then they suddenly noticed their practice was getting several trees chopped down right in front of them. Medea couldn't stop worrying about her master, but he was rock solid, sure they'd never think it came from training. To everyone watching, it'll just look like they're showing off a party trick, those usual spins in circle. They were dead right. Some girls were straight up asking whether they were gearing up for a big performance on their placard. Hermes froze when the butler suddenly burst out of nowhere, and worse, the man even had a placard saying, "That's not it." Hermes recalls a story from the day the first head trained swordsmanship for the king, how he used the exact same set of movements. They claim he bound their hands with a rope, snapping their moves into perfect sync so the king's body would finally learn the sword forms. But one of the fans clocked it. Wait, they weren't even tied together with a rope, and assume he's about to unleash magic. And just like that, they start cracking up and chatting nonstop. Medea braced herself for her master's true identity to get exposed, but when she saw him getting praised, her worries still couldn't stop the joy. She's totally clueless about what to do with those fans. And with a fierce snap of resolve, she turns to her master. Turns out Hermes didn't mean to, but his little story blew up. Now he's even more famous, and his meddling tale has the butler cursing up a storm. The very next day, he stormed into Rutia's shop, like the answer just had to be there. There, he realized the kidnappings weren't slowing down at all. Girls were vanishing more and more lately. Urrutia, looking on edge, grabs his attention and asks him to check it. That's why he snapped an order on the spot launch an investigation right away. The old man swore that people kept vanishing left and right inside his territory. But not a single one has been cracked yet. It looks like one cold-blooded culprit pulled off every single one of these crimes. In every one of those wild new incidents, the victims keep turning out to be young women. Their ages swung from 12 to 25, and every single one of them looked like they were flying solo. No wedding rings, no ties, just pure free life. Hermes clocked it instantly if their age sat in that range, then of course, Urrutia, that brothel madam, would suddenly pay attention. Mimi added one more horrifying detail: money has already shown up at the kidnapped girl's home. About 10 gold coins. Hermes froze in shock. Earning that kind of money would take a decade of brutal hard labor. If cash is exchanging hands, Mimi's already calling it, this isn't kidnapping, it's human trafficking. Hermes snapped that he was an idiot because that's way more than a girl's black market price, and even the kind of people who deal in cash like that wouldn't break their backs just to deliver money to the victim's family. His gut is screaming that this case is tied to something huge lurking beneath the surface. If they crack the case tied to a massive criminal network, their name will explode into fame overnight. Because he loathes fame, he couldn't bear the spotlight. So he started feeling bad for Urrutia and acted like their whole conversation never happened. Then bam, a flash of light erupts out of nowhere. And that's the signal the protective spell he cast to keep his sister safe has finally snapped into action. He tore himself away from Mimi, then bolted out of the house like his life depended on it, going straight to find his sister. And he spotted a carriage rolling in. He must have felt his sister was in there, just by instinct. So he yanks his sword free and raises it like a storm is about to hit, and slams it at the front of the carriage to stop them dead in their tracks. Then he strides straight toward his sword and rips it straight from the ground. Then a single swing obliterates half the carriage. Hustling the poor horse out of there, it left it trembling with pure terror. He snapped at the driver to ditch the person he'd just been left with, swearing she was his sister. But the driver shot that down and declared his move was treason against the kingdom. Hermes knitted his brows, utterly baffled. The figure standing in front of him isn't just any woman. She's the reigning queen of the Karamba Kingdom, Her Majesty Erica Rika Karamba. What a wild name, I swear. The moment I hear it, I'm ready to break out and dance the cha-cha. So, yeah, the Kingdom of Karamba isn't just some player on the map. It's one of the 5 biggest powers ruling the continent. People say among the 5, this is the mightiest nation of all, so unstoppable that it could take on 4 other nations by itself, no problem. Which only works if the Demon King of Kamatoria doesn't decide to crash the party. Erica snatches the carriage driver's attention and calls him Eleni. Eleni totally got it, so she yanked her blade free and launched into an attack. Hermes whipped out a spell and, with one sharp swing of his hand, tossed her dagger like it weighed nothing at all. Hermes snapped in shock when someone yanked her hood off, and he realized right there that she was nothing but a little girl. He figures she's the queen's personal maid, small as can be, about a head shorter than Erica, and when the queen snaps with rage, she orders Eleni to help her break free. But Eleni still wouldn't let herself, her eyes spilled with tears as she insisted, Hermes is strong. But the queen snapped the order she demanded that spell be cast. No excuses. Eleni hesitated, her clenched fist tightening like she was bracing for something that might shatter her. Still, she obeyed the command and shot off like a bullet toward Hermes. She lunged in and wrapped him in a quick, tight hug. Hermes snapped with shock as he sensed the magical energy blazing to life across her body. She was about to bring herself down. He warned her not to do anything reckless, then his hand slid to her back. She just clocked it. She was juggling 2 spells at the same time, and the white one, that was teleportation. Her plan was ruthless, wipe out the enemy and teleport Erica to safety. But right then she realized the catch. Her self-destruction was tangled up in the same move. If he tries to forcefully disable either one, it's like tearing off a scab 1 second later, an explosion can erupt. You can't undo that spell from the outside. Once it's set, it's locked in. So he scooped up the little girl and threw out his apology before anything even happened. Then he leaned in and kissed her, right there for what felt like forever. Erica stared in disbelief, swearing nothing had happened until she realized Hermes had dissolved both spells from the inside, peeling them off like they were skin and melting them down, and she couldn't shake the fact that he'd actually pulled it off. Hermes made it crystal clear this wasn't only Eleni's magic, because Erica had planted that energy in the first place. The moment she confessed, Hermes erupted in fury. She already knew exactly what was coming next. Erica shot back that it was all just emergency prep, and she made it crystal clear Elena was nothing but a tool in her hands. Then she finally sees Eleni sprawled on the ground and slowly calming down. Hermes fires off the question, does she even understand what she just did? Knowing Eleni was her maid and practically her lifelong friend since they were babies? She asked him straight up if he knew her, then strutted like she owned the world, blaring that she was the queen of Karamba. So Hermes didn't care about her rank at all, because this was all about what it means to be human. He snapped that she was still refusing to admit it. So he scooped her up in his left arm like she weighed nothing, then smacked her on the butt. Erica blew up with pure fury, but Hermes didn't flinch one bit, even telling her to learn her lesson. To even risk tossing someone close to her like that again? Because if she does, he'll smack her again. When Erica blurted that she was a queen, Hermes still slapped her anyway, and he insists it's no big deal. He'll spank her as many times as it takes. Erica finally calms her nerves and shyly leans in, asking for her name. Once she heard his name, she leaned in, breathed his name sweet as honey, and called him darling. But Hermes didn't catch it, so he snapped at her to say it again, and Erica blurted, "Darling," once more. And he thanked her for that serious scolding her first one. But it still made her feel weirdly happy. Hermes was completely stunned when, out of nowhere, his sister suddenly showed up. He admitted he went all in and chewed Erica out for real, and now she's completely hooked on it. He couldn't believe something like that was even allowed. As they strode through the town, turning heads with every step, people stared in shock because the brother and sister were walking together like it was the most impossible thing imaginable. Wondering who Erica really was, especially since she was walking right alongside them while Hermes quietly feared this would spark a full-blown scene. Erica boldly suggested she should make them vanish. Hermes snapped his eyes wide, stopped her in her tracks, and blurted that they'd just switched locations. So he slammed his magic down and boom, a blinding light erupted around them. In a blink, the crowd erupted. People left the crowd and stood there, completely stunned. Erica stared in total confusion, and Hermes shot back, "Relax, we're at my estate." Erica fired off the same words again, then sweetened them with "darling" once more. Again, Hermes snapped, irritation sparking in his veins. So he made it crystal clear to her, "I'm Hermes Kano, just a low-key, humble guy." Erica bursts into a giggle, convinced it has to be pure fate. Right after that, a maid barged in and told Hermes, "You've got company, someone paid you a visit earlier." But since he wasn't home, they promised they'd come back, and Hermes told his maid if the visitor returned, they'd handle the report later. Then he ordered her to take his sister and leave him behind with Erica. When they finally had some privacy, he snapped and demanded to know why Erica was out there acting like she could kidnap somebody. Eleni cut in and snapped that Hermes was being rude, but Erica shot her a wink and waved it off like it wasn't a big deal. She swore that for generations, the queens of Karamba have been stitching rose by rose into a legendary garden. But this isn't some random garden. Lady Rika Karamba, the legendary restorer of Karamba, kicked it all off by sweeping up the most stunning women from every corner of the world to build a harem. And the Garden of Roses is her big reveal. She hands that entire harem over to the man she chooses. Erica dared him to listen because the story of the master of the Garden of Roses was supposedly out there. But it only felt half familiar, and Hermes still wasn't sure he'd ever heard it. He froze when Erica blurted out that the demon sword wielder was his own ancestor. Same bloodline, same past, so it hit her instantly the moment she heard the name Kano. That's why Erica built her own harem. She hunted down the finest women in the land, scooped them up one by one, and made sure their families were paid back in a generous way. He fires back at Hermes, telling him he has zero clue how brutally rare truly exceptional women can be. But Hermes acted like her whole pitch didn't matter, then tossed it aside like it was nothing. He sat her down and warned Erica not to toss her vassals aside like trash, yet Erica just looked completely stunned, like she couldn't even process it. She drops an apology straight to Eleni, and that's why the poor girl's jaw basically hits the floor, because the queen didn't just say sorry, she actually meant it. Erica even swears she'll never pull something like that again. Hermes told them not to call him darling, but Erica wouldn't back down, and the two of them sparked into a full-blown argument. Harry just appeared out of nowhere, like the universe dropped him there. That's the visitor the maid was talking about earlier. Then Kari spots Eleni and Erica snaps back that, thanks to the former Demon Lord's orders, he's forbidden to lay a hand on any human who isn't his equal. So when she realized Hermes was actually matching the Demon Lord, heat rushed to her cheeks because he wasn't just amazing. He was even better than she ever dared to hope. Somehow, Kaori had the sickening feeling she just got thrown straight into way deeper trouble. Hermes' patience snapped tighter and tighter until irritation finally started to boil over. Inside their kingdom, the two of them leaned in and hashed out every urgent issue they could think of. Eleni and Erica stood there, and he went off on them, screaming, "Why are you here again?" Erica snaps back at him, demanding to know what his wife's meaning was. When she was his sweet queen, Hermes clenched his jaw at the girl, pure frustration blazing in his eyes. He blurts out, "Wait, do you really think it's fine for you to just hang around my mansion like this?" She ruled Karamba like a queen, so she couldn't afford to slack. She had to take it seriously. But he went completely wide-eyed as Erica suddenly sprinted in and latched onto him. She figures he's drawn to women who don't play when it comes to their work. Then Hermes broke into a sweat and finally, against his will, admitted it. He was stunned she was making all these calls so fast with that kind of unshakable confidence. Erica looks totally baffled because normally it's the rulers who hash all this out with their advisors and ministers first. But Hermes didn't need any of that. He snapped that if the king and queen were truly capable, then they should handle every decision by themselves for the fastest, cleanest result. Hermes stared at her like she'd seen a miracle, no doubt. She's the queen of a powerhouse nation, and that's exactly why Erica's cheeks were lighting up with a full-on blush. Paying students a real salary is one of the biggest reasons Karamba has so much power. In most countries, kids get shoved into labor instead of school, so education almost never even gets a chance. But in Karamba, students don't just attend school, they get paid a salary just for showing up. And that's how the parents finally breathe easy sending the kids off to school, building their gifts, and keeping that whole positive chain rolling, which ends up boosting the entire nation. And the one keeping everything running so smoothly is Erica. So, of course, he's left stunned by her talent. Even though he's stunned, he's not about to let her off the hook by lurking around his mansion. Erica teased him and pressed him for a reason. Hermes snapped in fury and yelled at her that she was an Aegina. Then Erica calmly fires back, explaining that the demon lord from Komatoria keeps popping up at his place all the time. Hermes points out that Kaori must be a demon lord besides the fact she's his aunt, and admits he can't stop her, even if he wanted to. Then Eleni cuts in, warning that if anyone discovers Erica is in another country, it'll spark a major diplomatic disaster. Erica shot them a calm look and said, "Don't freak out, I'm disguised." A method their ancestors cooked up that's brutally tough to spot. Hermes didn't buy it at all. She demanded to know exactly how she was pulling off that disguise. They stared at him, completely thrown off by the questions he tossed their way. Erica asked him how she looked, and Hermes just shrugged and said she was still rocking that same super fancy white dress she'd worn the last time. Hermes' eyes widened when Erica suddenly burst toward him, radiating pure joy. She swore her disguise couldn't fool him because the ring that was meant to choke his power wasn't on him in the first place. America wore a disguise woven by a royal mage using Colombatier magic so well hidden that nobody can see through it unless their magic level is higher than the mage's. So yeah, Hermes' magic is stronger than Erica's. The moment came and he snapped to a decision fast. She snapped at Eleni to start breaking up the Garden of Roses right now, and she made it crystal clear. Once the Garden of Roses shut down, she'd fight tooth and nail to make sure every single girl gets a real payout and gets sent home safely. Delaney furrowed her brow and demanded to know how anyone could be so sure, after she'd wrestled all of them together with that much effort. Erica justifies it, her garden isn't random. It's stacked with girls chosen to match her exact taste. So she decided to wipe the slate clean, then went hunting for girls who match Hermes' exact type. Hermes finally got what she meant, and that lit a fire in him because he still wanted to argue. But Erica flashed a wicked grin. She was about to hunt down girls who matched his exact type. Hermes was completely stunned because 1 second it was fine, and the next everything detonated into a brutal headache. Morning breaks, and Hermes jolts awake with a brutal thirst after downing way too much. He remembered the mission waiting for him today, the Slime Lord's subjugation, because a Slime Lord had just shown up right on the edge of the Kano territory. He spotted a bottle of water waiting on his side table. He didn't know if Sola sent it or Mimi did, but whoever delivered it saved his life, and he never even clocked the letter sitting right there beside it. Then, out of nowhere, a princess barged into his room and he suddenly snapped, bursting into action. Soon enough, they burst into a carriage and rattle off down the road. His face was long and grim, not from bad sleep, but because the princess was trailing him like a shadow. Hermes shut her down fast, saying, "Don't call me your master, I'm only your instructor." Rena rules as the princess of the Aegina kingdom, daughter of the king and the heir tied to her family's very own territory. Rena is talented and kind, but a compliment from her hits like royalty because long ago the guy who praised her accidentally took down her father, the king. And after that, the two of them became his disciples in the legendary Nanasu school. Rena said, "Honestly, I'm really grateful you agreed to take the quest. Even facing a foe as monstrous as the Demon King is way beyond her reach. She didn't break. She decided she could still learn a ton from a showdown with a Slime Lord." Hermes figured it was just another scheme to pad his image, so he grilled her. Rena confirmed that was exactly the real reason. She told him straight up that it crushed her to watch him stitch himself back together after every little mess, and knowing what he can really do makes it hit even harder, especially from a friend. She'd already seen him knock one down before, so she figured a Slime Lord wouldn't be a big deal. That's why she pushed for it, and that's exactly why Hermes snapped up the job. Later on, the carriage grinds to a halt somewhere, and Hermes looks fed up because that ride took forever. Rena quickly apologized, then tossed in an indirect jab like she was the reason he even ended up with her. And there it was, slimes everywhere, all bowing to their king. He turned to her and said, "I'll kick it off, and Rena will watch everything." Hermes has to stop Rena from slipping into even more respect for him, because he's going to end this with the perfect final touch. He has to keep it dead low and burn as little power as possible. This huge horde should drain only about 10 of his magic. And it has to be one deadly strike, so he fires a shockwave, charging the power in his own hand until it's ready to wipe every last one of them out. Ripped through the air, blasting straight at the monster. Then boom, a massive explosion lights up everything. Reina swept past all the slimes, then she suddenly snapped, "Wait, what did you do?" And he froze in pure shock. He starts asking himself, am I losing control of my power? And the thought terrifies him because it can't be that. So he scrambles for the real reason behind it. Then it hit him. He remembered that bottle he'd already been drinking from. Kari slipped him a letter. This secret potion would double his magic if he drank it, and now it's on. Because that drink is the spark that ignites a passionate battle. But Reina believed he'd only grown even stronger, so she starts gushing praise over him, rambling nonstop with stuff he doesn't even want to say just to pump up his reputation. Kaori and Hermes strolled beneath the cherry blossoms. The Demon King burst out in excitement. Hanami, that's the tradition where you chase cherry blossoms with food and drinks, usually right out in the open for a picnic. But Hermes doesn't seem interested at all. Kaori spilled that it was a tradition from her dad's homeland, then dropped the wild detail that, when she was younger, he actually returned with one cherry blossom and planted it across the whole continent. Hermes went, "Oh, so she's saying her father was the reason Hanami even started." Forget that for a second, there's not a single bite or sip in sight. Kaori leaned in and told him the servants would handle the rest later. Then she carried her own share in, right then. Then she couldn't help herself. She excitedly thrust a skull into his hands. Her father once swore that the Demon King of Durakatan used to sip honey straight from his enemy's skull just for laughs. So now Hermes clearly wants to throw down an argument over the skull. So Kaori slams the brakes on him. This spot is for Hanami only, and there's zero room for fighting. She also said her dad warned her not to kick off any fights just over which picnic spot to grab. And they've got to haul their trash all the way back with them. Hermes clocked that Kari just wanted to soak up Hanami, and he cut it off so Kari could enjoy the moment. Kari snapped, "I almost forgot. Her father always made sure to grab human flowers for Hanami too." She showed up for her precious nephew with a bouquet of flowers just for him. When the ladies stride right up to them, Hermes gaped so hard his jaw practically hit the floor. Because Northern Orutia was there, an absolute stunner with fair skin, razor-sharp eyes, and pure iconic energy. And the second, that's the third-gen Orutia, so rare you basically never see 3 generations all rocking the name Orutia. That third one with the plain-looking girl, that's Orutia of madness and pleasure. She might look modest in daylight, but the second she hits the sheets, who would have guessed what she'd get up to? Hermes snapped his gaze at Kaori and demanded if she was behind that call for the 3 because Kaori knew how fiercely he adored Orochia, and that's why she brought them right to him. Then Hermes swore that from that day forward, he'd do anything for her and sealed it by becoming her servant, number 1025. He asks if she can flirt with them, and the second Kari says yes, Hermes drops her like a hot potato and storms straight to the 3. Finally, he runs into the 3 Orutia. He can finally die happy, and right then, one of them pushes him and dares him to prove just how deadly he is with a sword. Hermes kicks things off with a killer sword dance, then launches his move. Right after it ended, those women swarmed around him and showered him with praise, telling him he's so beautiful, even if he's a man, while he kept having the time of his life with the girls. Kaori was absolutely thrilled, soaking up her own company because as long as her nephew was having fun, everything felt perfect. That's all that matters because Hanami is supposed to feel just like that, so you can actually enjoy it. A few days later, and everything's about to explode. A brand new photo book hit the scene, and its cover snapped the hottest trend from Arutia's latest pose. Medea stormed up to Hermes and demanded answers for why he'd snatched so many disciples. But the second she stepped into that room, reality slammed her. Hermes was there with Rena and her father, King, and she wasn't even on their level. She was just the 3rd student from Nanasu school. Sola was buried in a photo book detailing the trend all the Arutias are obsessed with right now, and tucked behind those pages is the shadow of a mysterious mentor. Sola burst into laughter because her brother's dad had suddenly become a famous celebrity. Hermes flopped onto the bed, letting his body sink in. He tore into himself for drinking too much, and once he started, he couldn't rein it in. In Binsu, a boy was sprinting through the streets, gasping like his lungs were about to give out, until he ran straight into a dead end. He went rigid the moment the voice behind him said, "There's nowhere left to run." He bellows at the top of his lungs and slams the book over his head. Jitters and pure terror hit him. Then it turned out it was just his friend messing around, and they were only playing. As they keep roaming, chasing answers into the unknown. The girl snaps that tag with him isn't even fun, and the moment he gets caught, he screams like a girl too. The boy spun toward her and told her she wasn't wearing her mask, then admitted he was terrified to play tag and only wanted to sit and read his books. She told him, straight to his face, that books wouldn't make him stronger. Because he's still a boy, he's got to sharpen his blade and master his magic so he'll grow strong enough to rival their lord. They keep talking, trading words like sparks that won't die. They didn't even realize that the world around them was about to turn dangerous, and the sky suddenly turned pitch black. When they showed up, the girl froze in terror, People erupted into screams, shouting at everyone to run because a meteorite was crashing straight toward them. But the girl in pure shock couldn't move, her legs were trembling, and a wave of nausea hit her hard. That's why the boy grabs her hand and refuses to let go. Luckily, Hermes tore onto the scene in time to rescue them. He ripped his sword from its sheath, instant and fierce, and to too many pieces. Then he launched a blast of magic straight at the tiny meteor shards rained down from the sky. Once it was over, he bolted out of the place without looking back. Two kids stared at Hermes like he was a miracle unfolding right in front of them. That boy looks fired up and decides he'll train his heart out so he can become just like him. She pushed back hard because in her eyes, he was perfect exactly as he was. At home, our lazy boy just slumps around with that same old blank expression. Because Sola told him, plain and brutal, that no matter how hard he buries his powers, she can't look away, and that's why he's a real lord, no doubt. Sola was born to light up the room, and she jumped in to help them without hesitation. Then she just kept talking and talking. Hermes was stuck in deep thought about it, all the wild meteorite that burst out of nowhere earlier. And whether this new one is tied to the other meteorite disasters, he has to dig to the bottom of what's causing it. But right now, all that matters is one thing, peace. Guarding everyday life is part of his duty as the lord. Hermes charged straight into the royal capital, Redum Egina, where the kingdom's power all waited. He dropped to his knees the second he saw the king, and said, "I'm reporting just like you summoned me." The king barked for him to lift his head and slapped a sensei on him like all that fancy formal stuff was never even necessary. Hermes won't comply, duty ties. His hands, the king roars with laughter because soon he'll be bowing to Hermes like a wide-eyed disciple. The royal guard's jaws dropped when they learned that Hermes wasn't just some fighter. He was the royal swordsmanship instructor. Hermes stayed right there on his knees, then demanded to know why he'd been summoned, only to hear the king say he wanted to get back. What's his? Then the guards whip out 3 swords tied to his ancestor swords that were left behind. Since that day, every royal instructor has to carry one as living proof, and it's treated like part of the official outfit. Then the king leaned in and demanded he pick one sword out of the 3. Hermes sprang to his feet and trailed the king, then the second he laid eyes on the swords. He could feel that the king was testing him, and there was no hiding from it. He was totally setting him up. If he picked the strongest blade, he'd get hit with flattery. Then the moment he asked to touch the swords, he instantly realized, yeah, it was a trap. The right sword looks plain and half-rotten. Barely worth a second glance, then the middle one jumps out, suspicious as hell because it's the legendary blade itself. Its edge wrapped in roaring dragon fire, and the left sword it hits hard, packed with enchantments that even come with its own guard. The king was clearly trying to shove him into picking the flashy centerpiece, and even some clueless kid would have felt the insult in that move. So he picked the perfect blade, the simple one. He braced himself for the king's disappointment. But to his wild surprise, the king lit up with pleasure and admitted he never expected just how incredible he really was. Because between those 3 swords, his ancestors had used each one at different stages of life, starting right as he was still in his youth. And the plane he picked was one his ancestor used back in his old age. In his twilight years, he's already the absolute strongest, and he doesn't need that legendary sword anymore. Because he picked the regular sword instead of the legendary one, it proved that saying wasn't just talk, it was the truth. The king had this outcome in his sights the whole time, and even the royal guard looked ready to cheer for him. But Hermes hated that vibe, because that gut-wrenching bad feeling was already creeping in. And right then, the royal guards seize him and start tossing him high into the air like he's part of some wild punishment. Next, Hermes headed home clutching the sword, and Medea's eyes lit up with pure excitement. She begged for permission to touch it, but Hermes cut her off and wouldn't let her. She begs for a quick touch, just a peek, but Hermes slams it down, warning the sword is so fragile it could snap at any second. Medea's eyes fill with tears. That's why Hermes grabbed the sword, let her peek at it just the outside. He swung the sword, but his jaw snapped open when it suddenly split clean in 2. The scabbard slipped right out of its sheath, dropping into the chaos. Then he figured it was because they'd slammed him into the air earlier. It's a legendary sword the king handed him, so he'd better shove it deep where nobody will ever sniff it out. He fixed the sword with his own hands, then slammed a little magic seal onto it. Hermes drifted through their home, sick with boredom, same tired mansion, same old hallways under his feet, same door waiting at the end of the same route. He slumped into that same worn-out chair just as Mimi came in. Even with age on his side, he feels nothing normal. Something's clearly wrong as he spots the old man, oddly tense, clutching something on his back. So he leaned in and demanded, "You good?" The old man snapped that something was seriously wrong, an emergency. So he tossed out this wild guess. Was it the toilet, or did another meteor just crash? The old man snapped back that this was an even bigger emergency than the one he'd warned about. They confirmed an abnormal outbreak of Icarus, and the old man snapped his hands together, barking for a maid to run over and grab something, to carry a plate topped with tiny droplets of water. Hermes finds it utterly disgusting, yet he still had no clue what any of it actually was until the old man said it was spreading everywhere right now, multiplying at a freakish, abnormal pace. Reports from every town and village hit by the disaster all screamed the exact same truth. The sky got ripped away. Hermes stared in disbelief at how the outbreak wiped out the sky, then realized this thing could multiply at that same terrifying scale, just on a whole new level. The old man leaned in and said, "The scariest part isn't only how many they are. They wouldn't touch a single human, not a bite of meat, not even vegetables or any plant for that matter. But once they suck up that water, they start multiplying like wildfire. Basically, they whip through the land hunting for water, stripping ponds and rivers dry, then guzzling the underground moisture until the whole region turns barren." Hermes couldn't believe it. He knew the whole country could collapse in just a few days. He has no clue about Acris, but he ordered Mimis to get everyone out far away right now. The old man bolted out the door to fire off evacuation orders across the whole territory because no matter what he does, nobody will ever catch sight of it. He stormed onto the site and immediately saw just how bad it really was because there were tons of Acris buried in the dirt like they were greedily gulping up every last drop of moisture. He had to act no excuses, no waiting. He instantly unleashed a massive surge of power and launched it like a thunderbolt straight toward those Acris, but he watched their wounds knit back together, one brutal second at a time. The second he shatters one, they instantly swarm back like they're multiplying out of thin air. He tore loose a massive burst of power that swallowed the whole area, so tiny that even Hermes looked like a little speck from way out in the distance. With that power, he could torch every Acra clean out before they even had time to multiply. Later on, they finally swept the whole area clear of Acris. So he tore off at full speed straight for the next infected zone. He dashed from one place to the next again and again like he couldn't stop, until he finally crushed every one of those 28 areas. Right after that, he crumpled onto the bed in exhaustion. Then the butler burst in out of nowhere. He wasted no time and straight up told him he wasn't doing anything else. The old man rushes to report the ACRUS disaster, but Hermes is already one step ahead because he's the one who shattered them in the first place. But he'd been dead wrong because the butler just confirmed that Acaris had evolved. Turns out that mysterious heatwave gulped down the aqueous one by one until they mostly vanished. But somehow, a few managed to survive, and those species get pushed to the brink of extinction. Then somehow they evolve anyway. After the Acaris evolved, it became a whole new beast. Its size still matched a human perfectly. Hermes was wiped out from last night after handling the 28 area. So he snapped into action and ended it with a single strike. He raised his sword and charged straight into the fight. After a few tense moments, every Acra crumpled to the ground, lifeless and still. That's why Hermes crumbled under the sheer exhaustion pounding through his body. After a brutal stretch of non-stop fights, Hermes is completely wiped out, more exhausted than he's ever been in his whole life. His vitality meter hits 0, and every single thought in his head just shuts down. Erica couldn't stop worrying about it. She's like, "Should I drag every doctor in the kingdom here?" Then Hermes growls and she blurts, "So do you want to get married?" In that state, she pushes the whole marriage thing even harder. Because if the man can't even sit up from exhaustion, that thing between his legs won't move either. Anyway, Hermes let out another explosive sound. She caught the signs he was starving, so she bolted outside and started whipping up food fast. After what felt like forever, she finally returned with something that lit him up like a match. She cooked up a legendary dish people swear is so vicious, a dying man would rocket out of bed just to get a nosebleed, but she still couldn't tell if she nailed it still. She poured her whole heart into every bite. She tried to shove food into his mouth, but Hermes couldn't even manage to open it. She's got to stuff it in somehow, so she grabs the food and uses her mouth to feed Hermes. Then she thanked him for the food wait. Ow, hold up. He ate, she ate, they both ate. Or was that just some totally wrong bubble text? Did she really thank him for the meal, or am I reading this dried up line like it's dinner? Hermes mumbled that it was delicious, and yeah, I am right there with him. Right before the FBI even showed up, Erica's face lit up. Hermes' hair color was already starting to look better. She was seconds away from shoving more food into his mouth. Corey suddenly burst in and smashed straight through the window. She rushed straight to Hermes, who was still sprawled on the bed, panic hitting her hard, so she grabbed Erica and demanded to know what happened, or if he was dead. She also said, "If he's gone, I can pull him back just as long as it's under 3 seconds. That 3-second rule was the one her father drilled into her, and Erica snaps at her for yelling like that. She insists Hermes isn't dead. He's just wiped out for some reason. Kaori finally calms down because she's right. Hermes' life force is running dangerously low. She was crushed because Hermes is no fun when he's acting like that. Erica nodded and said, that's exactly why she was asking her to keep her voice down. But Erica's eyes went wide when Kaori abruptly bolted and smashed into a totally different wall than the one before. She blurts out an apology to Hermes for every last racket, then she's about to keep feeding him when When Kari stormed back one more time and crashed again for the third round, he didn't hit the same wall this time. It was a whole different one. Erika's clearly annoyed, but Kari doesn't even flinch. This is just how demon kings act, right? Then she proudly unveils her prize, a crystal dragon whelp. Its liver is the ultimate cure and instant fix that melts exhaustion away. She yanked it straight out of the whelpy like it was nothing, then tore out the liver. Erika recoils in disgust and demands the Demon King confirm it's safe. Then Kaori flashes a thumbs up and Erika's forced to take the plunge. This time, Kori clutches the liver in her mouth. The very next day, 3 maids huddled together and spilled non-stop gossip about everything that went down yesterday. Kaori, the Demon King, and Queen Erika straight up played the role of Hermes' personal maid and that maid. Yeah, the one back in China felt so proud serving Hermes. This lazy fool fine after that night's exhaustion heard them. Because he was insanely popular, every time he stepped out, people would swarm in. Strangers kept lunging to get his attention, begging him to stop and take their stuff. He ended up with way too much, and it felt plain wrong to just keep taking. So on the way home, he grabbed a souvenir for Sola. Right in the middle of his journey, the air suddenly started trembling like something big was about to go down. Then a raging mist slammed into his back. He could practically feel scorching steam blasting against his skin. That's not regular fire, it doesn't just burn you, it melts you to the bone. And his mind spiraled, screaming, dodge or don't. No matter what he does, they'll still sing his praises, so stop picking apart his public image right now. So he slammed his foot into the ground and kicked up a violent gust of wind. He was totally baffled by what just went down, then spun around and scanned every face, hunting for the idiot who lit fireworks right in the heart of town. His gaze locked onto the girl, so he grabbed her attention and demanded to know exactly who she was. Sophia Despina steps forward and introduces herself right there like it's a promise. The girl snapped his name out like a warning and demanded, "Did you forget me?" Hermes racked his brain to place her, but her name hit a blank wall. So he fired off a question, "Did we meet somewhere before?" And he even tossed out a hunch maybe she's from some shop. The girl clenched her fists and snapped that she'd been waiting the whole time, every second of it. Rage flooded through the girl's veins, and then she unleashed a power so massive it shook everything. Hermes figured out that her power was now 3 times stronger than it used to be. He backed off at once and hauled ass straight home. Solar greeted him the moment he walked in. Then she clocked it. He'd been scorched. Hermes stared at his side, baffled. Like the moment it hit him, finally clicked. Sola burst into laughter, because the way he smelled made it feel like he'd been scrubbing with pumice like it could have toasted bread with steam. Hermes shot his sister a serious look and demanded to know if she'd ever heard the name Sophia Despina. His sister snapped her approval and leaned in, asking him if he had even heard the tale of how that first head led his 200 soldiers into battle across the whole land. Hermes nodded like, "Yeah, I heard," and Sola kept going. Despina was the name for the 200 who stayed loyal all the way to the end, because in that ancient tongue it means the ultimate vassal. Hermes didn't know the name, but Sola breaks it down fast. They're basically family. Most of the original 200 soldiers even took Despina as their surname, and over the centuries those lines fused into one massive great house. Hermes heard the whole story and suddenly realized there was a real connection here after all, then decided Sophia must have come to him for a reason. But still, that doesn't even come close to explaining the raw fury she unleashed earlier. They were still yapping about Sophia. Right when the girl came barreling in at their house, Sola panicked and clung to her brother in a jolt, and Hermes figured she must have been following his scent like she could be a beast person after all. Sophia snaps at him to get ready, and he thrust his power forward about 4 times stronger than before then. Panic sparked in Hermes when he saw Sola waiting, because there was no backing out now. He blasted his magic, vanished in a blink, and then pops back onto Sophia's back, so he taps her back just lightly, and she crumpled to the ground, knocked out cold. Hermes scratched his head because it felt way too close. Then he asked his sister if the girl was okay. He froze in pure confusion when Sola somehow seemed to recognize her. She claimed the greatest magic in all of Despina Sophia was hers alone. In the end, Sola lets out a proud shout, praising him for wiping out Despina's prodigy like it was nothing, while irritation still burns in his chest. And then he leaned in and asked, "So what am I supposed to do with Sophia, because that cute sleeping face with the drool was basically unstoppable? Earlier, that creepy mansion got slammed by a mysterious girl and the whole place got wrecked bad." Hermes let out a breath of relief, grateful Sophia was finally asleep and sound. Sola needles him for being such a kind soul, and Hermes snaps that she should quit because, he panicked a little after he knocked Sophia out cold with a hand chop. He grills Sola, asking if they're really ranking people, even inside their own house, especially since Sophia's the one with the biggest magical power. Sola shot back that Despina's got 200 descendants, and their whole system is simple when the Cano family asks. They strike fast with the right squad, so they rank everyone by combat power to spark ruthless competition. That just screams how tightly these siblings are bound to Despina. Sola also said Sophia's sitting at the top of Despina. Her magic is unmatched, her mind is razor sharp, and she's a once-in-a-decade prodigy, and then Hermes stepped in, grilling her because he couldn't shake the feeling. Why was this girl coming after him when he couldn't remember a thing? He even said, "Before we talk in town, I need to tell you I'm getting attacked right now." Solo's stomach dropped. Despina had even gone so far as to smash the Lord's mansion, and he knew Hermes couldn't just brush that off. She also tossed out the idea that the master was just too pathetic. And honestly, Hermes soaked up that comment like a compliment, but the real danger was Sophia's killing intent. His gut screamed this was personal, suffocating, and way too close to home. Sola was about to ask what he meant by clingy, but before he could even answer, Sophia jolted awake and nearly lost her breath when she saw Sola standing right in front of her. She sprang out of bed in an instant like she already expected this, and if Sola was inside, then Sophia had to be in the mansion too. She blurted out that she was sorry for losing control earlier, and Solus just grinned, telling her it wasn't a big deal, because the only thing that mattered was that she was okay. The two kick off their chat, but Hermes barges in and greets Sophia, and the second her eyes lock onto him, everything shifts. She snapped her fire at him, and Hermes hurled himself into a sprint just to get away, but Sophia told him to just stay put. Hermes was baffled that anyone would go so far for him, but Sophia shot back in fury. How dare he say that after everything he'd done? She went totally still the moment Sola let her go. As she screamed her name into the air, she knew one thing for sure: if she didn't slam on the brakes, she was finished. Sola pressed her for answers about why she attacked Hermes, and that's when she finally snapped out of it. Apologized for her behavior, but still went totally speechless, like she was scared to admit the truth. Solus flashes a grin like she's hiding a secret, and tells her, "If it's all right with you, I'll lend you my strength. Just say the word." She strides toward her, boldly claiming the Despina and Kano families have been tied together for centuries. Sure, they were master and servant on paper, but in truth they were family, and she reached out her hand, telling her she could talk to her about anything, and he could only think of her as his older cousin. Sophia burst with joy. She leaned in close and hissed something right into Sola's ear right away. The latter erupted in laughter and told her brother, "There isn't a secret in the world that can't be spilled." Hermes, meanwhile, was totally thrown off by what that secret even meant. That's why Sola leaned in and demanded to know, did he truly forget? Had he never come for Sophia, not even one time? Hermes was left reeling when he found out he'd proposed to Sophia during their chat. Little did they know, two nosy maid girls were sneaking around on their roof. Mimi spotted them instantly, and her heart screamed that it was dangerous. Hermes barked orders to Mimi that day, pushing for a bigger budget in key areas. At the Fountain Plaza, multiple spots were wrecked, so they sent crews racing in to fix it immediately. Mimi cut him off, leaned in, and whispered, "Is it okay?" And that's when he snapped his gaze over to Sophia. Someone was crouched on a bookshelf staring at Hermes then. Hermes calmly told the butler, "Don't worry about it." The butler snapped that it was wildly outrageous for anyone from the Despina family to barge in during his duties without permission. Then he ordered Hermes to stop her right now or face a penalty. Hermes looked rattled and admitted that it might be true that the situation gets messy fast. When the butler said he'd already heard the story, he jerked to his feet and snapped that it was Sola's fault for spreading it. The butler burst out laughing and told him that if he ever had to start talking about harsh penalties like that, he'd be painfully disappointed. He flashed Sophia a thumbs up and told her he'd hand the rest over to Then he storms out of the room. Sophia and Hermes sat alone in that one room, and the silence was so thick that even the air seemed too afraid to speak. Both of them froze in shock when Erica suddenly showed up with Eleni right beside her and sprinted straight toward Hermes. Sophia's eyes went wide when Erica called him darling, and Sophia blurted out that she misses him. Eleni couldn't stop worrying about Sophia's feelings, and she shot her a look full of pity. Sophia heard it all and saw it too. Erica clung to him like her life depended on it. That's why she lost control of her rage and blasted her flame. He called Hermes a cheater and then bolted out of the room. Erica stared in confusion. So Hermes blurted that the girl was Sophia, only to freeze when Erica instantly knew she was the promising Despina family girl. Then she demands to know what Hermes is doing with her, because if Sophia's getting too bold, she'll handle her herself yet. Hermes quickly shuts that down, flat out disagreeing. He told her that when they were kids, he'd joked straight-faced that he'd make Sophia his bride one day, and she believed it while he totally blanked it all. Sophia's reaction earlier basically screams one thing to Erica: she's into Hermes. And somehow that sparks a little jealousy in her. She decided to give it everything and play nice with Sophia after all. This was a tradition Lady Rika passed down. She grins at Hermes and urges him to chase Sophia without hesitation. Meanwhile, Sophia kept firing off insults through her rage, calling herself an idiot over and over again. But inside her head, she clawed at every second training and pushing herself until she could finally become the kind of girl Hermes would choose. The moment she heard he'd become the head of the family and even earned the king's nod, She cranked her magic training up to the limit, then broke down in tears because no matter what, he'd forgotten everything. To her utter shock, Hermes was already latched onto her back, bowing low and pouring out a heartfelt apology like he'd just been caught doing the worst thing ever. But she dug in her heels and snapped, in full-blown anger, that she didn't want his apology. She keeps blasting her power into the sky, lighting up the heavens with every hit. When Hermes laid eyes on it, everything came flooding back, every detail, like it was stamped into his mind and Sophia. She looked just like this the very moment he met him. Back then, he stormed up to her and demanded, "You okay?" after she started tossing firing spells that recklessly. Sophia figured she just needed to steady herself, then make sure he knew she was warning him not to step in. But Hermes didn't follow. He threw the pause button down and asked, "Hey, did something happen?" Then she admitted it. She kept getting beaten in match after match by a kid who was 3 years younger, and it only got worse when they laughed and called her the weakest. Hermes shoots it down fast because from where he's standing, it doesn't look like that at all. He said her magic skill and rapid firepower are both legit, but what really blew him away was how she reins in her own panic and never lets herself lean on anyone else. That's when he dropped the truth. If he ever got married one day, he'd want a girl as strong as her. Sophia's cheeks flared red, so she kept blasting magic just to steady her nerves, and then she begged him to get lost and leave her alone. That mindset was brand new to him, so it's probably exactly why Sophia climbed all the way to the top rank. He remembered every word he said back then was pure, heartbeat, deep truth. He slapped his hand onto her shoulder and told her to just roll with it. Then magic poured straight from his palm into her shoulder like a living spark. Hermes grinned because she got it instantly. He even tells her the secret to firing rapid spells: get your efficiency up, and you'll crank the power and fire even more shots. Sophia froze in shock, so he nudged her forward and urged her to give it a shot. Sophia gives in and says yes, so Erica, who's watching her unleash that rapid fire barrage, feels a little jealous, don't you? Later on, Hermes stormed into Arutia's shop. The girl started massaging his head, and then, out of nowhere, everything changed. Someone asks him if he's getting married. She fires off congratulations, but Hermes snaps back and denies it. Arutia couldn't believe a word of it. The rumors were flying everywhere. She was telling me about Sophia, how they've finally started clicking lately, even though rumors swore they couldn't stand each other at first. Still, Hermes stepped up and handled it with total sincerity and a straight-faced seriousness. Then he dropped the proposal, but Hermes' frustration exploded because that final part was completely made up. In his head, he told himself that taking it piece by piece could make it sort of not completely false. Maybe he'd even have to admit a few parts weren't totally made up. But Arutia laughed at him and warned that once he actually got married, he'd better explain everything the right way, whether it was true or not. Arutia has to figure out their favorite customer's wife for real. Then pray they can actually click with her. Hermes is totally baffled. So Arutia laid it out plainly. She told them they share every detail about their customers. So yeah, this is all about aftercare. If he gets way too hooked on a courtesan, he'll get completely ruined. But if he just stops showing up, that's a whole different kind of disaster. It's like a high-end restaurant feeding him the exact recipes so he can cook the same magic at home. She also warned him, do it wrong and you'll get yelled at worse. You'll end up getting dragged into a full-on marital fight. Hermes stared at Arutia in shock, amazed she managed to cook up all those wild thoughts. Later on, Arutia dragged him into a drink and promised to foot the bill. Hermes agreed fast, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it'd somehow all end up on him. After that, Hermes plunged into the dark and locked eyes with a monstrous spider tangled in its own massive web. He couldn't figure out why he was even standing there. A few hours earlier, Arutia and he were getting drinks in her shop, trading words about jealousy, so, in his head, Sophia's rage toward Erica had finally cooled. But if that fire snaps and turns toward Arutia, he's toast, so he's got to keep her smiling at all costs. He leans in and grills Arutia, asking what kind of girls make them smile and feel happy. The girl laughs and swears Tato-ing is all the rage, so when Hermes has zero clue what Tataroka even is, the shock hits hard. Arutia leans in and says it's a mind-blowingly rare monster spider egg slick on the outside and chewy as it cracks open. It starts sprinkling the moment he drops it into the drink. Drinking it is called tattooing something you share with a special someone, which is why he's standing right in front of that monster spider, ready to go. He snatched the chance and went after it immediately. Meanwhile, Sophia sat inside the mansion, completely calm, and kept her eyes glued to her book. An explosion suddenly erupted out of nowhere. Then the smoke tore apart and Hermes burst out. He snapped at her to take it, and shoved a pouch into her hands. She peeked inside and froze. Because it was a Tataroka, and she couldn't make heads or tails of it. Even though it was risky, she still took it, accepted his gift, and thanked Hermes like her life depended on it. But it looks like Sophia messes up again. She assumes Hermes is crushing on her, and then she blurts, "I love you," straight to him. He just stood there, totally speechless, like his brain froze mid-sentence. In his head, there's absolutely nothing wrong with hearing, "I love you." Just like Arutia warned, he's going to wake up the next morning and feel regret hit him like a truck for what he did. The very next day, in the study room, Mimi and Hermes went dead serious as they grilled the butler about delinquent taxes for the village of Shiromero, because lately, every time they try to pay, the whole thing turns into a runaround nightmare. So there's no real mystery here. The butler sizes it up, says it's nothing complicated, and orders the lord to jump to the next report. But Hermes took it personal, so he told the butler to step aside and leave that mess to him. If this is his shot, he'll need to be branded proof that he's incompetent, a lord who can't even wrangle something as basic as tax collection. So he stepped outside and drifted around, spiraling about how he'd mess up, get exposed as incompetent, and get branded for it until he suddenly heard something. Rage boiled in the man's veins as he screamed at the collector for being completely useless. Nisos, his whole body trembling, snapped and started crying, just a low-ranking debt collector. Massos was sure gentle words would work, and he kept slipping the name Daz into every sentence he spoke. Rage surged through him and he hauled off with a brutal punch. The man snapped that his words only mattered if he backed them up with action. Then he cut in hard, telling everyone to stop dodging excuses and leave Nassos. He tried to beg again, but nothing changed. He was still useless. Right then, Hermes shows up out of nowhere and sweeps him into an invite to eat because he knows exactly how to use him. So they slipped into a food shop, then ordered a ridiculous amount like they meant business. Cassos was trembling with nerves, intimidated by Hermes standing there. So he blurts out the one question, what does Hermes want from him? Hermes finally came clean and confessed he had a favor to ask, but before he even got to the details, he introduced himself first. They trade names and even lock up in a handshake, and Naso doesn't realize until it's too late that the guy's from the Kano family. Then the second he clocked who was standing there, he shot up to his feet like he'd been struck by lightning, and he walked right up and demanded, "Are you the lord of this domain?" Hermes nodded, then barked, "Sit down," because they couldn't talk while he stood there. Naso stayed on his heels, and he broke it down. There's a village called Shiromero. They're choking on unpaid taxes, and right then he needed Nassos to ride in and collect it for him. He agreed, willing to hand over that 10 cut, and Naso's jaw dropped, because that was an insane amount. The deal looked amazing, but he slammed the offer shut because deep down he knew it wasn't for him. He's been messed up his whole life, and just recently his own brother cut him off cold, so yeah, there's zero way he can pull this off. Hermes barges in, pushes him to go for it, and swears he sees his big potential only for him. That potential is really just the power to fail, and it haunts his thoughts. Nassus was blown away that Hermes actually believed in him, and that's when Hermes kept going, saying he trusts in Nassus's power and strength, even though in his own mind he sees it as the complete opposite. Nassos clenched his fist, and the words his parents drilled into him, "You're worthless," came crashing back like a punch to the gut. But then someone dropped those exact words into his ear, and he snapped, deciding right then to go for it. He's ready to stake his life on Hermes, no questions asked. Then he bolted out, leaving Hermes totally rattled, wondering if he'd just made the right call or if he'd accidentally flipped some crazy switch in himself. 6 months have blown by. Time didn't just pass, it vanished. Nusos pulled it off somehow against all odds. He stared down his true self and forged a whole new mind and body. He kept going back to the village chief's house again and again at first. The chief refused to pay, shrugging like, "I can't give you what I don't have." Nassos remembers the promise he made to Hermes. He'll put his life on the line and won't stop until the result hits, so he refuses to move a single step until the chief finally pays. He treated it like a mission, showing up in the village every single day for months until the chief finally threw in the towel, and stubbornness drove the chief to twist every last coin from that village just to pay him off. When the butler finally heard about Nassus, his jaw dropped because Hermes didn't just collect the debt. He also shaped a kid into real top-tier talent. And in the end, the butler heaps more praise on Hermes, calling his most essential trait the one every ruler needs. Nassau snapped into tears the second Hermes told him he did great. He even flexed in front of them, and the butler and Hermes' eyes popped wide at the sight. Then he grinned and explained that there's a smarter way to use it. After that, he made it clear he's not just chasing debt collection anymore. He's got business ventures ready to recommend. An instructor who ruled the gym like a drill sergeant. Meanwhile, 5 girls cram onto the same table, shoulder to shoulder, like something big is about to explode. It was Sola, Kaori, Rina, Medea, and Orutia. 5 names ready to ignite the whole story. Serena looks totally thrown off by Orutia suddenly showing up. Then she said she'd heard things and wanted to bring up Hermes, and she even asked if it was okay for her to talk about it, since she's married. Sola beamed and told everyone it was totally fine. She'd invited the closest relatives of Hermes, and she hadn't even thought about becoming a bride at all. Then she turned to the Demon King and Rina and asked, "Is this okay with you?" Orutia has no clue just how brutally strong Hermes really is, but Sola's got it handled. She can't stop thinking that everyone seems to be, "You've seen every wild thing Hermes has pulled off, and somehow it keeps getting crazier." Kaori says Hermes never means to go full power, but Somehow it slips out anyway. Urrutia snaps that Hermes is just as scatterbrained, while Medea, full of herself, brags that her master is the strongest guy in the whole world, because he knocked her grandpa out cold with one brutal strike. Sola blinked in shock and demanded, "When you say sword saint, you mean the world's strongest swordsman, Medea." Medea nodded and bragged that her grandpa was insanely strong, but even so, Hermes would crush him. Sola got it and figured Hermes was the strongest in the world. Yet her curiosity wouldn't let up, so she turned to the others and demanded, "What about magic? Who's the real monster there?" Rena shoots back that magic power is nothing like a sword and nobody can ever predict it. Not in any way she even proved it when he conquered the Slime Lord's magical power. Urrutia stared in stunned disbelief, like the power in front of her didn't make a lick of sense. Marina told me, "Take the stairs and you won't break your leg but skip them, and yeah, you could... Yeah, same with magic, keep spamming weak spells all you want. And it's whatever until one day you suddenly fire off a huge power-blasting spell and your body hits the wall with brutal strain. And that lingering residual mana always keeps a clear memory of just how badly the body got worn down." With Hermes, there wasn't a single trace of strain. Sola made it crystal clear for Hermes hitting the Slime Lord level feels no harder than stomping up and down a flight of stairs. Urrutia barges in and tells everyone, "Even if I'm with Hermes and even if we're trapped in some world ending, hopeless disaster, Hermes would still keep that calm, floaty energy. He hasn't even cracked open his full power, and he's still got energy to burn," so Reyna fires back, saying she's way more comforting than some poor soul who's stuck panicking and fighting for their life every single time. Medea snapped that her master barely ever even unsheathed his sword, just a blast of spirit and a freezing glare, and the little fry would scatter on the spot. Urrutia couldn't stop thinking how much longer could Hermes keep going and still be okay. She threw down a brutal warning like the sky itself was about to unleash a massive meteor crashing to the ground. Urrutia looks like she's on the edge of panic and asks the three, "Does it look that bad?" But Kaori just shrugs like it doesn't even matter. And just like that, Sola breaks into a smile, because it's not a problem, and the others all nod in agreement. Reyna didn't just make it, she forged a meteor. That's when Hermes abruptly tore off toward the area. But his jaw hit the floor the moment he spotted the four girls, Kaori included, of course. He bursts into the crisis like a hero, fixes it with a stone-cold calm, and the only thing that actually makes him panic is the horrifying truth someone saw him do it. But somehow he still hasn't unleashed his real power. Meanwhile, Queen Erica and Eleni packed into a carriage, hauling ass to make it to the tea party in time. They totally ignored the menacing gaze coming at them. Meanwhile, Hermes blinked in shock because Erica wasn't anywhere in the crowd. She's the kind who always keeps her word if she says she'll be here. She's here, and if she doesn't even call ahead, she still shows up anyway, like she owns the surprise. Especially when Hermes is involved, she'll scramble for every second, desperate to make it happen. Sola lit up with a plan and told him to go pick her up. Since Erica looked after him the other day, I'm at least going to return the favor just a little. He's got one mission, grab her some sweet dorayaki. Meanwhile, Erica's guards were locked in a brutal brawl with the beast on the road. And that's exactly what made it feel so weird. A monster beast lunged and pounced straight at it. But then bam, everything hit at once. Hermes showed up and told them it was all going to be fine now, but the two extras couldn't help panicking, because he was totally getting mauled by the beasts. They totally froze when the queen called him darling and addressed him straight to his face. She leaned in and blurted out, "I love you," straight to him. Delaney pushed him to bolt with Erica, but he shut that down. He refused. And he was so sure those super strong guards would smash through anything that came their way. Somehow, against all odds, they pushed through and brought those beasts down. But instead of praising them, Erica praised Hermes, then the two knights' faces fell and their moods soured. Hermes pushed her to sing praises for the two because they'd busted their backs working their hardest, and reminded her to hold tight to the people who matter most. He clocked the guards lying there, completely knocked out. And even Eleni and Erica couldn't escape the chaos. They dropped into sleep the instant the gas hit. And it looks like nothing I do can touch him. Behind every twist and turn stood Rasselmere, the Duke of the Karamba Kingdom's heir, pulling the strings the whole time. Lady Erica is still young, and right now, passion has her completely in its grip. So even if Mir talks, she won't hear him because he's ready to cut her down if she keeps standing in his way. She should finally get it. He's the one who truly deserves her. He jammed something into the beasts, but Hermes threw him a warning. Don't you dare think those Mir beasts could ever take him down. Mir thought he was just playing the tough guy because if those meat shields hadn't stepped in, he swears he would have been wiped out in the last fight instantly. Every night, that meat shield had him dead serious, and he wiped the beasts out without even breaking a sweat. He tells the ugly noble straight up that this isn't even his final form. Mir barked at him to unleash his real power right now, just before he plunged the needle into his own neck. Now that he's transformed into an absolute monster, he storms in like he owns the place, full of pure confidence. But Hermes slips every single one of his attacks like it's nothing, dodging them with effortless precision. Realizing brute power still wasn't the answer, Mir slammed a booster serum into his veins at a brutal 120 concentration. That pushed his ugliness to a whole new, brutal level. His hand stretched out into writhing tentacle-like tendrils, charging at Hermes again and again, never letting up. But our boy shut it down without even breaking a sweat. It finally snapped, then it detonated, straight up exploding everywhere. With a brutal punch, Mir's ugliness hit its absolute breaking point. Then he crashed into a deep, unshakable sleep. Erica leaned in close and thanked her darling with all her heart, and told him right away that she'd been awake from the start. Yeah, her dress is custom built to guard her life and keep her purity safe too. If Hermes dared to touch her, it would auto-erase the moment his hand made contact. Seeing him go speechless, she couldn't help wondering if he liked undressing girls himself. Hermes just stayed silent, but asked what they'd do to this moron, Erica Newmer. Had that kind of bad habit for a while. He's a delusional narcissist who swears the whole world should fall for him, and when they don't, he flips the blame onto everyone else like it's their fault, not his, and then drove the blade straight into his chest. Because he tried to hurt the queen, there's only one ending waiting for him, the death penalty. Mir tried to use her to hurt Hermes, then even threw in forbidden drugs at that point. He was past saving, so she hit him with one last crime to seal the sentence. Normally, nobles get the mercy of an honorable suicide instead of a brutal public execution, but Mir gets none of it. She leaned in, called him darling again, and demanded he repeat what he'd just said. But he hasn't even unleashed everything yet. Guys say that all the time, but almost none of them ever really go all in afterward. When he refuses, she rushes over to Eleni's unconscious body, and it was her beloved diary, and she had to scratch out those words right now before her memories slipped away. She's been scribbling every single thing she's learned about him, everything into her note. But she swore, as long as I'm breathing, nobody's going to lay eyes on it. The moment she dies, that archive becomes official, something everyone must carry forward, generation after generation. Now, hear what he said. I haven't even gone all out yet, and what we do next will live on in history. Fresh off the paperwork, he tore back to Kano Estate. Mimi hands the rest to Hermes, begging the old man to stick around a bit longer. Then the old geezer shoots straight out the door. Or he clocks something as seriously off with Sophia lately. But he realizes this time, it's even better than before, as he demanded to know what the hell had happened. Kakari burst through the door and slammed a kick into him mid-charge. Sophia snapped at her to run get away from Hermes right now. He slung the word brat at her and dared her to meet him outside. Sophia kicked things off by making the first move. He hurled ultimate raging mist at her. Hermes stared in awe, realizing her strength had exploded and her power was finally on a whole new level. Left, and Kokori stared back as her opponent ready to clash, and she couldn't land a single hit, nothing ever hurt her. Ever since her mother warned her not to touch weak humans, Kokori had been holding back, she showed. She flexes her power, swinging her hand and cleaving a massive boulder in one brutal motion. And then she saw it, and it punched straight through Sophia's soul. Hermes shot her a warning, but Kokori snapped back. She didn't even lay a finger on her. But seriously, what's up with this tiny girl? When Hermes leaned in and told her the shocking truth, she wasn't just anybody. She was Sophia Despina from the Kano family. At last, Kokori was 100% sure this had to be her niece. Suspena used to be one of her father's slave soldiers, and when he had a child with one of the women, Sophia became her niece. Whoa! Sophia's jaw dropped after she heard Kokori was a demon king, right as the conversation finally ended. Kakari pulled her nephew in and promised they'd have a blast together, ideally somewhere with 0 people around. Realizing they were only saying it as a clue, thinking it meant something, Sophia burst into motion, sprinting fast and shouting, "Perverts!" She totally misread what Kokori meant. What she was really saying was simple: if anyone's nearby, they'll get dragged into their game before they even realize it. She heaved a monstrous boulder into the air and declared, "Today's game is Giant Rock Catchball Arc." Meanwhile, Sophia sat alone by the lake, staring into the water like it held all the answers. Lake water rippled as he threw stone after stone into the surface. When Hermes showed up, she ordered him to go have some fun with the Demon King. Hermes shot back that Kokori was wildly exhausting and stressed, it wasn't some dirty comment, just the truth. Kokori, the super being everyone calls the Demon King, acts just like a kid in the most dangerous way, so it ends with him fighting her until they both hit collapse. So yeah, in a way it's calmer with Sophia around. Sophia was completely baffled, but still chose to stick with him a bit longer. He barreled through the massive rock straight at them. Hermes just calmly obliterated it. No step moved, no sweat broken. Sophia froze in shock at what she was seeing, and acts like he's the greatest, somehow instinctively dodging a flying giant rock without even flinching. Meanwhile, Kokori burst into laughter, like she'd seen that move coming a mile away from her nephew. That lazy boy was sprawled out, fully sinking into pure, no-effort relaxation. Sola burst into the room and started staring at the photo. He flashed a photo in front of her, and the second she recognized Mimi, she yanked it away like it burned. Then he threw another photo onto the screen. This time, though, it wasn't just any scene. It was their maid slipping into a change of clothes right before their eyes. Sola snapped at him for sneaking photos of their maid, then made it crystal clear that posting them was 100 forbidden. Hermes snapped, "No, it wasn't me." He told her the photo finally arrived for him this morning. Later, he headed to Arudia and learned their store had been a mess too. Because lately, too many kids have been targets of voyeurism. But nobody ever spots the real culprit. He shoved those photos in his hands and demanded his help. And once he stepped out of the tavern, he couldn't stop thinking, how was he even supposed to handle this? As soon as he pulled up at home, he spotted a full-on commotion right in front of the gate. He asked what was wrong, but the embarrassed woman just froze, then wouldn't say a word. Spotted that tomato-faced look while clutching a photo, he shoots out of the room with a quick, shaky excuse and snatches a stack of photos off the table overhead. To his shock, the guy in that photo wasn't just similar, it was him. The moment the women praised his build, his embarrassment shot through the roof, and they couldn't wait to get a taste of it. Stormed into his office and vowed he'd nail the culprit no matter what it took. He unleashed his power and swept the area, hunting every detail in the surroundings. And the moment he spotted someone, he froze in shock when he realized it was his sister in her underwear. He darted back in a flash. After 20 minutes, he still hadn't bagged the culprit. Time was running out fast. The very next day, Sola stormed into his office. But when he finally reached it, the window was shattered to pieces. While all of this was happening, Binsu was right in the middle of it too. That exact table sat in the corner like it had been waiting there forever. Everyone was left scratching their heads. There weren't a single photo in sight. Meanwhile, Hermes was crouched in the shadows, ready to vanish as he clutched his sister's photo like it was the last lifeline he had. And he muttered that whoever caused this mess, he couldn't feel a single trace of their presence. Back at the mansion, Solo got locked in maximum security while he changed out of his clothes. Behind the photo, a man sat there chuckling like he'd just heard the funniest secret in the world. For finally tearing off the mask and stepping into the light. He made sure to slip right past the maids before, He skidded to a stop in front of Sola, then snapped that she was just an old hag before, snapping photos of her and posting them for free. And that's how he'll rise back to the level of a god once again. Out of nowhere, a massive arm swings in and snatches him. Hermes had no clue the culprit would turn out to be some random guy. Who could wield magic? The ghost froze in shock this kid could actually see him, then demanded to know who he was. Hermes refused to give his name, sneering that a peeper like you doesn't deserve to know it. He clenched his grip harder and harder until the ghost's body shattered into dust. The ghost blasted the truth into his ears. People out there are waiting for him, even a god. And he wasn't some creepy peeper. He was doing what he alone could do for everyone, including the demon queen. Hermes finally snapped his patience, for all that mumbling was completely gone. So he slammed through him and turned him to dust. He rushed to tell his sister about the ghost one that can sling magic like it's nothing. And he promised her it was never coming back, no second chance. But if another one pops up, they'll catch it instantly. Sola thanked him, and then dropped the bombshell that Princess Rena and Queen Erica were victims too, only they kept quiet and didn't say a word. She'll spill everything truthfully to them, so he'd better brace himself for their gratitude later. The photo slips right out of his hands, and Sola snatches it up instantly. He grips it, hurls it straight up into the sky. Hermes shot out fast, tearing into the open sky to track it down. Terrified that someone would spot that photo, Kaori burst in with a kick, but he went down fast and died before he even had a chance. He slipped out of the way, then the earth took that hit, and a brutal, massive crack tore across it. But then he caught something strange hanging in the air. Snatches it out of the air, and the moment he sees it, that it was her and nothing, and she couldn't believe it. He was a boy after all. Like her father promised, flat chests were status, and she wanted his cravings to go wild so she could take her aunt's refusal as a target for her own agenda. But Hermes shut it down immediately, and he blurted out exactly what had happened to her. He hit a wall emotionally because he clocked it way too late. Yeah, even if it was only a ghost. When Kaori leans in and asks, "Want to train with me?" He can't stop thinking about his master, and it hits him hard. All that training gave him was trauma, and then right behind him, someone snapped the exact same technique on him. He froze in shock because he honestly didn't see the attack coming, not even once, until it was already on him, only to find out it was his master behind it all. Hikari, the magic sword, burst into a cheerful greeting and told him, "Long time no see." Cory clung to her, calling her his big sis like it was the greatest thing in the world. Seeing his great-great-great-aunt beam with pure joy, he couldn't wrap his head around it. How could she be this sweet when he'd seen the fire she'd need to get here? That Kaori was still clinging to her with all she had. Hermes called her master, and Hikari snapped, reminding him he was meant to say big sis, not that. When he was still young, his master made him fight those monsters with his hands tied and told him to just call her big sis. Soon he should haul the orcs down while their hands and legs are tied, then grin and call her big sis. To pass his graduation training, he has to slay a dragon with a sword forged from tofu, and on top of that, he's got to call her big sis. Kari noticed the tremor in his hands and snapped, "What's wrong?" Hikari guessed he was getting pulled back by memories from the past. Tells Kaori that she's the one who trained him back when he was just a kid. Kaori always called him nephew, so she couldn't shake the weirdness until Kaori admitted Hermes was her father's great-grandson, which made him her great-nephew. Makari let out a sly chuckle and said, "If that's true, then guess what, I'm basically your aunt too." He never once told him her name, Hikari Yuki. She's got the same father as Kaori too, which makes her his great-aunt. Kaori finally dropped the truth. Hikari wasn't just a weapon, she was a magic sword. Her father used a magic sword and boom, Hikari was born. With that said, Hermes can't forget the insanely heavy sword, so heavy it feels heavier than a whole mansion. He just kept hacking away with his sword, swinging alongside his master, Hikari, during training, until one day he realized he'd gotten way stronger without even noticing. He cut himself off the second he felt those brutal memories creeping in. Because the bigger question hit harder, why did Hikari pop back into his life after 10 years, and what on earth had she been doing all this time? Honestly, there was no big reason at all, she just decided to stop by after some time, and he looked visibly shaken the moment she showed up. Kaori couldn't stop wondering what kind of lesson she'd carved into him: the never give up, give it your all kind. Human bodies crack fast, so you've got to settle the problem around 30 and keep moving before it all falls apart. If you stay stuck at 30 all the time, you'll still have fuel left when the moment hits hardest, like her lesson. And like he's kept his output steady to the very end. Even if he was insanely strong, there was zero chance he could hide it. His power just kept spilling out. Still, he barely pulled it off this time with just 50. But next time, nobody's got a clue what'll happen. He decided to crank it up, training all over again so it would run a full 50 longer. So he keeps leveling up until he can pull off that 50 output using only 30 of his power. He tried to bolt, and he's just sprawled around lazily outside the mansion again. Sola told him to snap out of the act and take things seriously because she swore he was so ridiculously incredible. Even the Demon King couldn't touch him. She wanted the whole world watching, screaming, and finally realizing just how incredible he really was. But Hermes refused to take things seriously. Hold the world in peace. Suddenly, a terrified ghost shot past, mumbling, "Relax, I'm just a regular ghost." Like that would make everything okay. Meanwhile, Hikari walked out of that training session feeling absolutely unstoppable. Now that Hermes finally wrestled her power back under control, she's ready to kick things up a notch. She slams the brakes in front of a dungeon, then blurts her mom's name under her breath. Hermes was living the best moment of his life, like nothing could touch him. Sophia stormed right up to him once he found out they were finished with his job. She shot a quick question. "So, is anyone else showing up today?" Hermes hasn't caught a single word, nothing at all. That left her stuck in deep thought about what to do next, and Hermes couldn't shake the feeling she was about to slide into a date request. Since he had nothing planned today and the sky was calling with perfect weather, he decided it was the perfect time to get out. He swept her off her feet and asked her to join him on a picnic. Seeing her bright smile hit him like, wait, maybe this isn't so terrible after all. Wondering how on earth they'd wound up in this place. Sophia figured it out from stories. "This is the trial, Nay." Hermes shrugged and swore he couldn't remember anything like it, but yeah, he was lying. This entrance is burned into his memory. The moment he became the head of the family, they sent him on a mission. Go fetch a coin from the first battle cave. Deep in the cave, 7 gleaming coins sit waiting, each one stamped with a different star count, from 1 star all the way up to 7. The more stars you've got, the easier it is to grab the rewards. 1 star is brutal, the hardest of all, and check this out. In that cave, the coins near the entrance demand way more magic to lift, like they're daring you to struggle, but the deeper you push in, the less they fight back. He had no clue how the system worked, so he grabbed the nearest 1-star coin by the entrance and walked it right back like it was no big deal. Terrified his real strength would be exposed, he somehow conned everyone into believing he'd only grabbed the 7-star coin. Sophia knew he flashed the 7-star coin at his inauguration, but she still reckons that if it were him instead, he'd snap up the 1-star coin with ease. So she pushed them inside and dared them to see for themselves just how insanely amazing he really was. He smashed everything in his path, leaving nothing standing, until they finally dug up a coin stamped with the Kano family's first head. Turns out the first head carved out the cave and even the crazy mechanics inside it. Sophia lunged for the coin, then the world snapped, and something terrifying stopped her dead. So she lunged forward and hurled it in an instant. The coin drinks in magic like it's alive, and if you don't have enough power, your hands won't even hold it. Honestly, Hermes was trying to keep her from ever seeing this part. Still, he snatched up the coin and started plotting how to make her stay silent later. That coin is acting totally different from last time, and he can't shake the feeling that something's off. The second he set it on the altar, the color ripped into something new. And then it hit him. This one wasn't like the last either. Sophia leaned in and pushed for going deeper to uncover the truth. She snapped back that she'd read all about this trial in that document, and then swore there was even more scribbled inside. In their ancestors' hometown, people whispered about a legendary item so powerful that if you collected every piece, it would grant any wish you could dream of. It can even drag a dead person back from the grave. Hermes made it crystal clear no matter how many coins they grabbed, it still wouldn't trigger a thing. Then he caught it. Some guy swore that item was real, like he'd seen it with his own eyes. And the woman who recognized him? Kano's very first head stamped herself into the coins, building a trap so someone would go hunting for all 7. If it was their ancestors, I wouldn't put it past them to do it just to mess around. Honestly, that wish is the kind of bait you can't ignore. And he's got one burning wish he wants granted total anonymity so he can lounge around and do nothing and never pay for it. After what feels like forever, they finally spot the last coin. It's burning even brighter than every other one. Even after they finished gathering all 7 Dragon Balls, the 7 coins, then nothing. Not a single thing moved. As he weighs the idea of just tossing them back in, the coins suddenly burst into a blazing beam of light, unveiling a woman who looks exactly like Hikaru. The woman stepped forward and said, "I'm Ellie." Then stopped cold and corrected herself, "No fairy." Scratch that, she's not just any goddess, she's the dragon goddess. After he realized the wish granting was nothing but a cruel lie, Hermes felt so stupid for getting his hopes up this was the hidden trial, and it still wouldn't unlock the first time. Only the strongest, with abilities beyond the rest, can even earn a shot at this. Thanks to the brutal training Hikari put Hermes through, his stat cap shot even higher. Now you've got to pass a hidden trial by hitting a combined target your displayed power plus your latent capacity. Earlier, his latent capacity was too small, so everything stayed locked tight, but now he's grown up and the trial's finally unlocked at least. That's what it looks like. Williams, together with the first-generation ancestor inside her, once blasted out 120 of her strength to face a brutal enemy, but she couldn't hold that power for long. For a heartbeat, she stood toe-to-toe, but then that long, grinding fight crushed her, and she never forgot it. So she spent the rest of her life training like a weapon, forcing herself to run at just 30 so she could master total control. This spot was built to see if someone with her exact kind of power had finally shown up again. After all this, Ellie couldn't stop herself. She wondered if he really craved the power to rule the world, and Hermes shot that idea down instantly. So she pitches him rule half the world, no joke. He still shuts her down, and that shocks her because she never thought he'd refuse both offers. Because he was humble and honest, she handed him everything at the bottom. Hermes tried to refuse the offer, but she had already slipped a spell onto him. He's got the power right now to claim all 15 worlds. He went to argue, but the dragon goddess had already dropped her farewell and vanished. Sophia demanded to know what happened, and he told her his power just rocketed out of nowhere again. Sophia's shoulders lifted with relief because she knew he's stronger than ever now. Hermes came here just to coast through life and quietly make that wish come true. But somehow this goofy loophole might have snapped him into something even stronger, and that is the very last thing he wanted. And now it's not just strength anymore, he's got the power to conquer 15 worlds. She kept her promise, the coins hardened into stone, and no matter what he tried next, the magic wouldn't budge. Solar couldn't shake the fear that her brother-father was sick. But then he rasped that it wasn't like that at all, lying on the bed, barely moving, head still pinned down as he stared into nothing. Was that if he snapped his head even a little too carelessly, that shockwave by itself would tear the mansion to pieces. That's the same incident where everyone's abilities doubled back then. Even though his power shot up, it still felt like his own. So his body adjusted on the spot, and he instantly took control. But this time is different because it isn't his power at all. That's why it's so brutal to keep it under control. So he figured, fine, I'll just vanish in the mansion. And instead of anything else, he just collapsed onto the bed like a lifeless ragdoll. And just like that, the wall under his bed was already smashed open. He can't risk telling his sister about it. If he even hints his power got stronger, she'll light up and immediately shout it to the whole world. And if he tried to bury it, he just knew things would spiral worse and worse for sure. Luckily, Sophia tore through the scene and arrived right on time. Sola sized her up, then snapped her gaze right back at her brother-father. Because her brother was sick, pinned to bed. Then Sophia finally showed up. She spotted something green and vanished, leaving the two behind. Hermes scrambled to stop her from locking the door, but she ignored him and did it anyway. That not-so-happy shout was so loud the window almost shattered. He still can't rein in that power. If he so much as sneezes, this whole mansion is about to get obliterated. So Sophia didn't waste a second. She hit the library right after, tore through research for hours, and hunted for anything about the girl from yesterday, praying an old book might not spill her real identity. She shoved a book into his hands, one with a sword on the cover, and a long-haired girl whose hair nearly brushed the backs of her knees. That sweet, spellbinding look hits you the same way every time details may shift, but it's always a dead ringer. But he knew this wasn't the girl from yesterday. It was Hikari. And then Sophia realized why everyone kept talking about her. She's well known and tied straight to the very first head of the Kano family. And this book straight up says the girl's name is Hikari Yuki. She's not human at all, at least. That's what it looks like. They're thrown off by the name, sure, but Honestly, even her name feels totally alien compared to theirs. Remembering how the girl yesterday nearly spilled her own secret, Sophia snaps to attention because she realizes it's written in the book. She's Alaber, the demon sword Hikari Yuki has been carrying this whole time. Now that you mention it. Since Hikari is literally a demon sword, Hermes has finally stopped fighting it and accepted the truth. A demon blade can turn into a human being. From everything they've learned so far, there's no way around it. This is pure hard labor. First off, a demon sword dragging around another demon sword is straight up bizarre, and somehow that title demon sword fits way too perfectly. The power that girl got is straight up demonic energy, the kind that leans hard into darkness, not light. Because that demon sword's power is literally born inside it. Hermes thanked her for digging into all those details, and she instantly blushed like crazy. She brushed it off like it was no big deal, totally normal, and joked that this stuff is basically effortless for her. Then she kissed him goodbye and couldn't wait to dig even deeper, just for him. All by himself, Hermes decides to slip into silence and just sleep, because right now there's nothing he can do and no way to fix it. Right then, Karori burst into the room and kicked him. With that one kick, the explosion tore through the mansion and nearly half of it vanished into rubble. Karori was buzzing with excitement, wondering if this wild shift was the payoff from that special training he and Hikari did just the other day. As she told him to show her more, Sola snapped a warning, "Don't push it too far." After inheriting the cursed sword's uncontrollable power, Alaber. No matter what he wanted, fate grabbed him by the collar, so he had to deal with it. So he went full throttle to take down Karori in a no-holds-barred zone where they could fight without a single restraint. Karori slams her hand to the ground. He called up a few beasts just to get warmed up. When the crowd finally vanished, he stared at the silence and wondered, is that really all she was? Karori snapped a glowing magic circle into existence, summoned a colossal, ginormous monster that lunged at him in the blink of an eye. Hurling him across a brutal distance, it tore through everything in its way and left nothing standing. Panic hit him hard, the rocks were too brittle, and he couldn't stop. As soon as he clocked it, he realized the whole key was nailing the perfect timing. He slammed the brakes on his body before it could go any farther. He clicked his tongue and realized that if he pushed any farther, everything was about to spiral into total chaos. All right, he's got to pull just the right amount of power enough to drain the pressure before this place turns into a total explosion. He unleashed it with the perfect amount of power. Kaori and that colossal monster just froze in stunned silence as everything hit. A few days later, Sola leaned in and asked if he'd heard the Priogia Plains were finally in the air. They were now officially christened the Pre-Oxia Canyon. Hermes glances over his shoulder, then demands to know if a meteor struck or if something else just went down. Karori claims the blast left behind magic residue that matches Eliober's perfectly, so as long as she keeps quiet, nobody can trace it back to him. But now that he's finally wiped that energy clean for good, he can actually steer it so he can live like himself again, and honestly, that alone makes every bit of it worth it. A maid rushed up to him and blurted out that Prince Shull had finally arrived. As he ordered the maid to escort the prince straight to the parlor, Sho, the third prince of Agina, snapped at him to loosen up and stop acting so tense. Hermes dipped his head in respect, shooting out a quick apology for keeping him waiting. Shullo told him it was totally fine because it was Shullo who'd been the one to show up out of nowhere. This royal guy was weirdly nice, especially considering he's Rena's brother, and Hermes had already bumped into him countless times before, but there's no way he's showing up here unless something big is driving him. Sholo leaned in and asked if he'd heard about Zikaphos. Not the magician's Ichifos, no, he was imagining something else entirely. Zikaphos isn't just a name. It's really the story of the object that forged the very metal that shares its name. The holy sword of national protection, Zichifos. Roughly 400 years back, a legendary sword was forged into the hands of the very first head of Kano, and it's the same blade Selena Agina now carries. That's exactly where the Zikaphos medal got its name. Oh, and Zikaphos is also hailed as one of history's 3 greatest swords. The holy sword Zichifos, those blazing light rune blades held by Kano's first head, and at the end of it all, the cursed sword Alaber. He heard the Demon King was tearing through the Priogi Plains, and he was dead sure Hermes was the one who faced him. He marched right up to the Demon King and demanded answers, and then learned the truth. She only plays with Hermes, her nephew, because her mother's order still rules her world. So after their investigation at the scene, their team found clear traces of the Demon King's presence and the lingering burn of Elbar's power. Still, he couldn't help but feel relieved at what they uncovered. He'd feared these were strange new power traces that could spell doom for humanity. But when he realized it was Hermes, that worry instantly evaporated. Turns out, only 2 people in all of history have ever tamed Alaber's power. And when it came to that list, Hermes was one of them, leaving him completely stunned. He shoots back, "So how'd you pull it off?" But Hermes shuts his mouth and refuses to say a word. There's no way his royal family evaluation can climb any higher, so he has to outsmart Prince Shu and send him packing. People already spilled the truth about this new power. He has to shut down the pursuit for good and stop Shu before he spills the truth. While they were playing chess, he told him it tied back to Kano's very first head classified, locked away so he couldn't share a thing. If it's a family secret, even a prince won't be able to chase it any further. At Cave's trial, they might one day drag him back into the spotlight right after his death. That ritual passed down to each head, don't you dare tell anyone about it. The prince stares at his Facebook like it's a throne room secret, before he finally accepted that this really was their family secret. Still, he can't help believing he's got a pretty sharp eye for who someone really is. And he could tell straight away that Hermes wasn't lying. But something tells him this isn't the full story. Hermes won't spill a single word, not matter how hard he hammers him with questions. He shut the questions down and demanded proof, show me that power, the kind strong enough to shake the very land itself. Hermes finally caved, but only after demanding a promise this secret couldn't leave his lips. Prince Shuga nodded and swore on the royal family's name that whatever he sees will be sealed tight, right up to his last breath. Hermes finally thrust his hand up to the sky, convinced that if it's just a cloud he can blast away, then nothing will be left behind to prove it. And Mimi's burst with excitement, telling him all about. He spills the bombshell about a royal decree straight from the king. Now the ancient covenant Selene Egina and Nanakano swore to is finally ready to be fulfilled. Hermes Kano is about to rise as a quasi-royal, with every status and right granted just like a true royalty. It's an ancient promise the Kano family swore to keep. Solo couldn't stop wondering if he'd remembered it right. Was that first head really Her Majesty's Swordmaster? If so, that's the reason the Kano family has kept those barons going for generations. And if the Kano family's head ever manages to seize the real legacy the first one left behind, then just for one whole generation, he'll be treated like royalty. That's the promise. They don't fully get what true legacy even means, but everyone keeps hinting at something unreal locked to the first head. Reliving that wild moment when he crossed paths with the prince, he remembered Sho's promise whatever he saw he'd carry it to the grave. But the prince never promised he'd keep those secrets buried with him forever. Meanwhile, Arusha pleads with him, begging him to say yes to this one chance she'll never get again. But seeing him just having the time of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling. Why did everything hit him out of nowhere? And right now, the manor is in chaos, a full-blown commotion tearing through the place. Arusha knew exactly what he was talking about because once he rose into that quasi-royalty status, people started flooding him with gifts non-stop. Every last present gets piled onto ox carts or horse-drawn wagons, then hauled off fast for delivery. It's taking forever just to check them so they can't cram them all inside the manor. And now everyone's stuck lining up around the place, and that line hasn't even paused for a full day. And on top of that, there's also this kind of service rolling out now. The second that new title dropped, some people's whole personality flipped overnight, and suddenly they were all over him, fawning like he was royalty. But the second he starts talking with Arusha, it's the same story like her presence locks the chaos down and brings him peace. So he pressed her for that once-in-a-lifetime favor she'd mentioned, only for her to blank on it completely. So he rubbed her head, trying to shake the memories loose. She had her sights set on a fresh batch of sake that had just rolled in. Hermes told her to open it and stop worrying about the money. Then Rusha cut in, saying the price is exactly the same as always, but there's one tiny problem. This sake is so tough to drink right that it'll humble you in one sip. They age the sake for 20 grueling years, distill it once, then hit it with a fresh base spirit, and let it sit for another 20 years. It's basically a mashup of two totally different kinds of sake, blended into one bold pour, so you've got to sip it in a way that works for both kinds of sake. Depending on how you treat that sake, the flavor shifts in your mouth, so people pour it the usual way. Keep half of it warm and half of it chilled, and let the taste play both sides. Hermes fixes his eyes on the glass of sake before tea. Or he nodded and said he got it. He swung some magic at it, and he broke it down and said it was ice of air. He stirred that into every single kind of sake. He fires off water magic to slam the temperature down and follows it with wind magic to whip the air into a deadly vortex. When he spins an air vortex, the wet air and dry air split on their own, and then once he chills, the dry side ice crystals form right there, so the flavor never gets watered down, and they can finally drink it while it's still fresh. Squeezed in a quick, tense little chat, that sake was ridiculously good, like one sip and I was instantly hooked. Made her blurt out whether turning air into ice was hard. Hermes beamed and said, "It's that simple. Once you catch the little trick, she's easy to handle." Just the other day, outside that mansion, there was this long line of hardcore liquor fanatics coming in from... The stream of people from everywhere kept growing and growing, all because they couldn't resist learning his secret tricks. He tried to pin everything on Arusha, but the truth hit him, and he realized it was all his fault. He felt it hitting him, so he decided to lay off the booze for a while, and then he just sank back and let the warm water take him, all relaxed and carefree. When water blasts his face by accident, he snaps, "Why are you messing around in the pool?" The queen feels like she can't just leave things like this. She has to wrap everything up with him, or it'll never sit right. and tomorrow she won't be able to come for a while. There's a nasty festival ritual, and for the next 2 weeks she won't be able to move a single inch. When Hermes ordered her to take care of herself, she rushed in and wrapped her arms around him right away, convinced her panic was the reason he needed her. Solar showed up, ready to snatch his attention and demand his time. But as she stared at how close they were, it hit her. She was totally intruding, and she knew she had to back off. He tried to brush it off and deny it. But then the queen slammed him into a tight hug, like she wouldn't let him go. Eventually, she snapped her head toward the exit and walked away. He realized her magic felt wildly off, like it was wrong in a way he couldn't ignore. So he leaned in and told Erica, "I'm going to check it out." As he burst into the mansion, Solar writhed on the floor, swallowed by pure agony. The doctor leaned in and told him she's showing signs of mana stone. It's that magical power that keeps coursing through the body, so when it gets jammed up like a rock, yeah, that's why they call it stone. Somehow the energy starts to stagnate, then it clenches up and hardens. Her condition wasn't going to kill her, but there's still no real cure for it. Seeing his sister writhing in pain, he couldn't shake the fear that she wasn't really okay. Then the doctor gave a firm yes, telling him that between all illnesses, this pain ranks at the top, but it's never deadly, 0% mortality, and by day 3 the symptoms will vanish completely. Hermes couldn't drag it out any longer. It dragged on so bad that he finally asked, "How do I stop this pain?" Because it's a manstone. Once Hermes smashes that hardened stagnation inside the body, the symptoms vanish on the spot. But trying to read the flow of magic inside someone else's body is straight up impossible. Hermes listens as the doctor lays it all out, and then snaps into action, using magic fast to analyze every inch of her body. Once he clocks exactly where the stagnation started, he taps into his consciousness and uses it to... Sola was splashing through the pool, and it felt like the whole world had turned weightless. And still, this adorable little doctor couldn't wrap his head around it. He could feel the mana stone from the outside, then boom, he smashed it in one shot. No one's ever done that. He was dead sure this would be the hottest topic everyone couldn't stop talking about at the medical magic conference. This time, Hermes stopped caring what mattered right now. He's relieved Sola is healthy again. As he dug through a chaotic pile of documents, he stayed locked in and focused. Medea burst into his office, practically vibrating as she snapped out the report on the emergency crisis. She tried anyway, then slammed into an invisible wall because getting inside was flat out impossible. The investigators swear there's treasure buried somewhere inside. She couldn't help but wonder, how did they even know that in the first place? And since nobody could get in, she started to wonder if it was the treasure's aura messing with everyone. Hermes snapped her head around and urged him to take a deep breath in, then let it out slow. And then right on his command, she sucks in a breath and lets it out, steadying herself. She sucks in a deep breath, and for a second it looks like she might have just run out of air. Then she calls out to her master only now, with her voice steady again. He told her what she did wasn't just luck. It was a swordsmanship rule that uses strategy to shove back against what the opponent expects. She snapped back to the point and told us about a brand new ruin they just uncovered in Odessa. Ancient ruins sometimes surface after hundreds or even thousands of years underground, and when people dig them up, they uncover relics of a world that's vanished. Just recently, Doriaki and Bloomer's long-lost inventions from those ancient days lit a full-on cultural firestorm. Medea said the only weird thing about the ruins was this: no one could even get inside at all. Something's blocking the entrance like a barrier that refuses to break. Nobody's been able to smash through it, and right now, it's still got most people trapped and scrambling. And her grandpa swore it reeks with a woman's presence now he's hauling ass to that ruin, realizing the ruin might be just what he needed to burn the time. Hermes hopped into the carriage the very next day, right there with Arusha. He made it crystal clear every so often, you've got to spend your money on other people. But Arukia could feel it. He invited her for a real, hard truth, not just politeness. She's known him for years, and she knows there's no way he'd push for an outing without some sneaky agenda lurking underneath. Hermes tells her there's nothing to fear, then urges her to keep acting just like she always has. Marucha had the audacity to ask for a lifelong favor, then spun her around and made sure she knew she wasn't the one truly responsible. Outside, Mimi shouts that they've finally rolled up in Odessa, the ruined village where it all was uncovered. This ends at chapter 35. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga and have a great day.